Chapter 2039. Tang Ku. Chu Luiyue was naturally familiar with this name. He was once the top refiner in the world. No, to be precise, after Tang Ku, there had been no one who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him for thousands of years. Since ancient times, he was the strongest one. Of course, there was also Mr. Su. It was just that Mr. Su came and went in a hurry. Other than the battle with Tang Ku and the 5 sacred artifacts, there was no other news about him. No one even knew Mr. Su's name, so how could they find a chance to find out? Therefore, in comparison, the world knew more about Tang Ku, and they respected and yearned for him more. Tang Ku's tomb. Didn't they say that he disappeared not long after the battle back then? Why did they suddenly say that his tomb was found? Chu Luiyue was very shocked. Taizu sighed, yes. Back then, Tang Ku was a world-shocking talent. How awe-inspiring he was in the entire Divine Ruins world. Unfortunately, after that shocking battle, he didn't make any more movements and disappeared not long after. It was said that even the Tang family didn't know his whereabouts. He didn't appear until the Tang family was in chaos. Since then, everyone finally believed that he should have died. As for when he passed away and where he was buried, no one knew. Not long ago, there was news that someone had found Tang Ku's tomb. Chu Luiyue asked, then, where is his tomb? Rumor has it that it seems to be near Qinggu Slope. Qinggu Slope. Family Wei's territory. Chu Luiyue remembered this place. It was Wei Shiping's family, which was also a famous first-class family in the Divine Ruins world. Taizu nodded. When this news came out, the entire Divine Ruins world was shocked. Now, many refiners should have already planned to go. Chu Luiyue frowned. Will the family Wei's people be willing? After all, that was their place. Moreover, Tang Ku's tomb. Who knew if there were any treasures left by Tang Ku? This was extremely tempting for any cultivator. Taizu put his hands behind his back and chuckled. Of course they won't. But this matter has already spread. How can they do anything about it? Chu Luiyue understood. That was true. After Tang Ku disappeared, the Tang family fell apart. Countless aristocratic families and clans joined forces to hunt for the treasures and inheritances left behind by Tang Ku. Now that Tang Ku's tomb had appeared, who wouldn't be tempted? There were probably a lot of people who wanted to participate in this competition. No matter how powerful the family Wei was, how could they go against the will of the masses? The family Wei's people are quite smart. They know that they can't take it all for themselves, so they decided to compete openly. Half a month later, everyone who wanted to explore Tang Ku's tomb would gather at the Qinggu Slope and act together. At that time, whoever had the ability to open Tang Ku's tomb and obtain the treasures or inheritance left behind would own it. Chu Luiyue chuckled. Family Wei's desire to live is quite strong. In comparison, being open and fair was indeed the best way. No matter how unwilling they were, they could only do so. So this time, I'm going to go there myself. Taizu said seriously. Chu Luiyue looked up. She rarely saw Taizu with such an expression on his face. After all, it was Tang Ku's tomb. Taizu was a refiner. Naturally, he couldn't resist such a temptation. But won't this trip be too dangerous? Chu Luiyue said thoughtfully. The benefits are tempting. It's hard to guarantee that no one will have any evil ideas, it's inevitable. But how can the path of cultivation always be smooth? Taizu laughed. He was quite open-minded. Girl, you know that I've been in the realm of refiner for too long. But that's because you've been sleeping. No matter what the reason is, this is the reality. Taizu shook his head and interrupted her. Now that you're the lord of the Peach Blossom Dock, you can take charge of things on your own. I can rest assured. This time, I really want to go and have a look. Chu Luiyue sighed softly. In fact, she knew what Taizu was thinking. He had been sleeping for 1,000 years. During that long time, only a wisp of his soul was waiting alone. Now that he had finally woken up, he naturally wanted to go to a higher level. Besides, how proud was Taizu back then? Tang Ku's tomb was too tempting for him. Why don't I go with you? The great ancestor laughed, but he refused. Girl, you just came back. Now is the time for you to rest. How can you run around? Besides, there are a lot of things in the Peach Blossom dock that you need to deal with. He patted Chu Luiyue's arm. Don't worry. Besides me, there are a few people who will go with me this time. Chu Luiyue knew that those who would go with him would be the refiners who had a close relationship with Taizu. She hesitated for a moment and finally nodded. When will you leave? Tomorrow. Chu Luiyue was not surprised. It would take some time to go from the Peach Blossom dock to the Chingu slope. It was just right to leave tomorrow. Then please be careful. Chu Luiyue said seriously. Taizu looked at her and couldn't help but shake his head and smile. Taizu of your family has also traveled in the world of divine ruins. Girl, don't worry. He repeatedly reminded her like he was a child. By the way, Chu Ning and Shengguan, you should be here in a while. When they came to the Peach Blossom dock previously, the two of them happened to be at the critical point of breaking through, so they didn't bring them along. Chu Luiyue knew about this. She nodded slightly. The arrival of those people and magical beasts really made the Peach Blossom dock lively. Especially those magical beasts. Because of the chaotic environment in the Peach Blossom dock in the past, there were few magical beasts, and even fewer divine beasts. Now that Chu Luiyue suddenly brought back a large group of them, it naturally attracted the attention of the entire city. According to Chu Luiyue's instructions, Cini specially chose a mountain area for them and ordered that no one was to come near and disturb them for a month. After all, they had to recuperate. Chu Luiyue's idea was simple. Once they had all recovered, they would open the mountain area to the public. At that time, if there were cultivators who wanted to contract magical beasts, they could try. If they really had the ability, these magical beasts would naturally be willing to submit. After the crowd heard Chu Luiyue's words, they suppressed the excitement in their hearts and went back to cultivate on their own. In short, the entire Peach Blossom dock's cultivation atmosphere was in full swing. In the evening, Chu Luiyue once again came to the Gate Realm. Wu Yao and Yu Jiu were guarding here. Ever since the previous incident, Cini had changed people again. Now, only the 13 Yu guard could take care of this place. The two of them already knew that Chu Luiyue and the others had returned, but they didn't expect her to come here so soon after her return. Master. The two of them looked at each other worriedly. They didn't want the same thing to happen a second time. Chu Luiyue waved her hand. I'm just here to take a look. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2040. Only then did Wu Yao and Yu Jiu relax. Chu Luiyue took a few steps forward and stood still 3 steps away from the door realm. Her gaze was slightly focused, as if she was looking at the door realm, but also as if she was looking at something else through the door realm. She was very sure that she did not see wrongly that day. There was indeed a mirror in this door realm. Rong Xiu's face was reflected in that mirror. But it was a very unfamiliar expression. Moreover, the attire of the person in the mirror was completely different from Rong Xiu's attire at that time. That was obviously not an ordinary mirror. Suddenly, light waves rippled above the door realm. A figure was faintly discernible. Chu Luiyue's eyebrows twitched slightly. Then, she saw a face that she could not be more familiar with. That was her face. But, there was also a difference. The woman in the mirror had a calm expression, and her eyes were dark and indifferent. But there was a noble aura between her eyebrows that was high and unapproachable. That pair of eyes seemed to be filled with 10,000-year-old frost, wrapped in an eternal chill. Chu Liuyue's heart was in turmoil. However, the expression of the woman in the mirror did not change. It was as if it had been like this since a long, long time ago. This was her, but it was also not her. Master. Master. Wu Yao's voice seemed to come from very far away, finally waking Chu Liyue up. She came back to her senses, closed her eyes, and then turned to look at the two of them, only to find that they were looking at her nervously. What's wrong? Chu Liyue frowned slightly. Wu Yao said worriedly. Master, just now, you seemed to be engrossed in something. We called you a few times, but you didn't hear us. Yes. Master, are you all right? Yu Zhou, who was at the side, also looked worried. Chu Liyue pinched the space between her eyebrows. I'm fine. Just now. I was just thinking about something and didn't pay attention. Hearing Chu Liyue's words, the two of them looked at each other. In fact, they were all people who were used to observing people's expressions. Chu Liyue's state just now was indeed very different. However, upon closer inspection, there was indeed no sign of injury. Maybe. I was really in a trance. It's good that Master is fine. Chu Liyue wanted to leave, but she asked again after taking a step. Have there been any abnormalities in the Gate Realm recently? Master, ever since you and His Highness left this place that day, the aura and power of this door have not changed. However, based on the current situation, it is still impossible to pass through at will. Guard it strictly. Without my permission, no one is allowed to approach the Gate Realm. Chu Liyue said. The two thought that she was still worried about the accident that happened that day, so they didn't suspect anything and immediately agreed. Yes. Before the problem was solved, they had to be extra careful. Chu Liyue turned back and glanced at the Gate Realm. The silhouette above had long since disappeared. She pursed her lips and turned to leave. Chu Liyue returned to the Yu residence and went straight to her room. She sat cross-legged, closed her eyes, and began to cultivate. The surrounding energy of heaven and earth continuously flowed into her body. With her current physique and level, she didn't need to spend too much effort on it. Her body would devour the energy and convert it for her own use. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, dusk covered the sky. There was no moon tonight. A few snowflakes were carried into the room by the cold wind. Chu Liyue opened her eyes. There was no light in the room, and it was dark. However, her eyes were exceptionally bright, like stars in the dark night, shining brightly. At this moment, her brows were slightly furrowed, as if she was worried about something. After a while, she stood up and walked to the window. She was about to close the window, but the cold wind blew in her face, instantly waking her up. She held the windowsill with one hand and stood silently. The scene that she saw in the Gate Realm during the day was still deeply engraved in her mind. No matter what, it couldn't be erased. Little boat. She suddenly spoke softly. The surroundings were silent. After a while, a figure quietly appeared in the courtyard. The figure was thin, and his hemp clothes were loose. The faint light reflected from the snow fell on his face, and his facial features could be vaguely seen. It was Chang Wanzhou. He had returned to the Yu residence with Chu Liyue. However, he didn't like crowds, so after he came, he hid himself. Although Chu Liyue had arranged a place for him to stay, she knew that he should be nearby. As expected, he came out after she shouted. Little boat, come in and talk. After Chu Liyue finished speaking, she closed the window, walked over to light the room, and then opened the door. Chang Wanzhou walked through the thick snow in the courtyard, but did not leave any trace. Now that he was a great god, it was naturally not difficult for him. He walked into the room, and Chu Luiyue was already sitting at the table. "Master." He curtsied. Chu Luiyue didn't ask him to get up as usual. Instead, she poured herself a cup of tea. The tea was cold. "Master, I'll get you a new pot." Chang Wanzhou lowered his head slightly. Even if he didn't look up, he knew what was going on. He had always been very alert. "No need." Chu Luiyue took the teacup in her hand and slowly rubbed it twice. "I don't want to drink it anyway." Chang Wanzhou responded and didn't say anything else. The room was completely silent. After a while, Chu Luiyue asked, "Little boat, when did you become a great god?" Chang Wanzhou said, "Not long ago." "Which day exactly?" 31 days ago." 31 days. After such a long time, you didn't think of coming to the realm of divine ruins to look for me?" Chu Luiyue looked at him and asked calmly. Chang Wanzhou paused. "I did. But it's very troublesome for ordinary people to enter the realm of divine ruins. I heard that after passing the trial in Cloud State City, I could enter the realm of divine ruins. That's why I went there. I didn't expect to meet you and your highness there." "Have you been sleeping all this time?" "Yes. When I woke up, I found that I had become a great god. Although it was a long time, it was a good thing to be able to become a great god after waking up." Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. "So, you don't know how you became a great god?" "I don't know." Chu Luiyue laughed. "Then you're very lucky." Then, she was silent for a while and didn't say anything else. Chang Wanzhou finally couldn't help but look at her. "Master, you've..." Bang. Chu Luiyue put down the teacup with a sound that was neither loud nor soft. Chang Wanzhou's heart also skipped a beat. Chu Luiyue inched closer, stared into Chang Wanzhou's eyes, and enunciated every word clearly. "I remember that you said you went to the Tianling Imperial capital to look for an old friend. So, have you found that person?" Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2041. There was silence in the room. Chang Wanzhou looked up and met a pair of dark and bright eyes that seemed to be able to see through everything. His heart was beating violently, as if it was being gripped tightly by something. Cold air spread and engulfed his entire body. A moment later, he heard his own voice. "Not yet." Chu Luiyue was still staring at him. "Really? Really? If that's the case, why don't you look for that person instead of following me? Master once said that you would help me find her." "Anne." Chang Wanzhou took a deep breath. "I can feel that she's in the realm of God." Chu Luiyue laughed. "So, you want me to help you find her?" "Yes." Chu Luiyue stepped back a little. The oppressive aura was instantly reduced by a lot. She stood up and looked down at Chang Wanzhou in front of her. "Little Wanzhou. Let me ask you again, how did you break through to the exalted god level?" Chang Wanzhou was silent for a long time and finally said, "I seem to have been to the realm of God a long time ago. In my memory, it was also at that time that I broke through to the exalted god level." Chu Luiyue's eyes flickered slightly. "A long time ago. When was that?" Chang Wanzhou shook his head. "I really don't know. Give me your hand." Upon hearing that, Chang Wanzhou didn't hesitate and directly reached his wrist over. Chu Luiyue put 2 fingers on his wrist and injected a stream of force to check the condition of his body. Sure enough, the cold air in his body had dissipated a little. The cold air contained an extremely shocking power. It was also because of this that when he integrated all this power into his own cultivation, he could make rapid progress. If all the cold air in his body was dissipated, it would be terrifying. Chu Luiwei retracted her hand. You can leave first. Chang Wanzhou hesitated for a moment. Master's tea, Chu Luiwei smiled. Don't worry about these small things. I'm going to rest soon. Chang Wanzhou bowed and left. When he left, he even closed the door carefully. Chu Luiwei's fingers tapped on the table. She had a vague guess in her heart, but she wasn't sure, so she called Chang Wanzhou to ask him. Chu Luiwei knew Chang Wanzhou quite well, and he shouldn't have lied just now. But he did not seem to know much about his body. Perhaps there were some things he did not dare to say. With a thought, the shield appeared in front of Chu Luiwei's to appear. She brushed her hand lightly over it. She had never seen the secret text engraved on it before, nor did she recognize it. But why did she still have that notebooks? She of course. If he had caught Immerse, he should have asked him. Yi Wentao had been instigated and incited by him, which was why he had set his mind on the armillary shield. He should be the one who understood this the most. And the music score, Immerse obviously valued that music score the most. Otherwise, he would not have spent so much effort to snatch it from her. According to what that person said, the music score was divided into 3 parts. Now that she had 2 parts, there was only one left. It was a pity that after such a long time, she had gone to many places, but she still did not find any relevant clues. The world of divine ruins was so big that it was like looking for a needle in a haystack to find something. Just as Chu Luiwei was deep in thought, a fluctuation suddenly came from behind her. She was about to move when she smelled a familiar cold fragrance. It's so late. You're still awake. A low and pleasant voice sounded. Chu Luiwei turned around. It was Rongxiu. Her lips curved. You came back so quickly. Rongxiu walked over, and his gaze lightly swept across the armillary shield in front of her. He then went over to hold her hand and leaned over to kiss it. Knowing that you, was waiting, I naturally came back as soon as possible. Chu Luiwei glared at him angrily and looked him up and down. How was this trip? Are you hurt? Rongxiu smiled. I'm not hurt, but I miss you, very much. I feel that something is missing. Chu Luiwei leaned forward with a faint smile, and her warm breath sprinkled on him. It was ambiguous. My husband has been running around. You should serve you well. Rongxiu's eyes darkened and he held her slender waist with one hand. Chu Luiwei's eyes moved. My husband has worked so hard. You must have a good rest today. Then I won't disturb you. After saying that, she turned around and was about to slip away. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows and pulled her back with a faint smile. You will know soon whether your husband is tired or not. After saying that, he carried her to the bed. Sensing the dangerous aura on him, Chu Luiwei hurriedly said that. I still have something to ask. Before she could finish speaking, her back had landed on the soft brocade quilt. Rongxiu's slender fingers gently took off the hairpin on her head. Her long, silk-like hair fell on his hand. What's the matter? You can ask tomorrow. Rongxiu's voice was very low, with a trace of suppressed hoarseness. Seeing that he was about to come over, Chu Luiwei hurriedly asked, How is Fifth Elder? Rongxiu paused in his actions. He looked like he was careless, but in actual fact, his actions were very light. I sent Fifth Elder out of the Red Moon Desert and didn't go in with him. Wei Yu has arrived. Fifth Elder insisted on going back by himself, so I didn't insist. Chu Luiwei pursed her lips. In fact, this was also within her expectations. Fifth Elder seemed to be very reluctant to let them go now. This time, he was forced to let Rongxiu send him off. I don't know what's going on with Wei Yu. Even they are so afraid of her, Chu Luiyue murmured unconsciously. The rest of the words were quickly swallowed up, leaving only a vague murmur. After a long time, she heard Rong Xiu's deep and hoarse laughter faintly. What do you want to know? I will help you find out. What do you want to get? I will help you get it. But everything can wait until tomorrow. Besides, you can't take these for free. Chu Luiyue originally had a lot on her mind, but after being stirred up by Rong Xiu, she quickly threw those things to the back of her mind. It wasn't until the next day that her waist and legs were sore that she barely pulled her mind back. But at this time, her mood was much better than before. There were many things that had to be done slowly. Even if she was anxious now, there was still no way to solve those problems immediately. Instead, it was better to wait and see, and be prepared. Looking at it now, there was a lot of fog in front of her, but one day, the truth would come to light. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue snuggled into Rong Xiu's arms again. Rong Xiu originally closed his eyes, but when he noticed her movements, he opened his eyes and looked over. His eyes were deep. Chu Luiyue hurriedly retreated again. She almost forgot that this man couldn't be provoked early in the morning. Rong Xiu couldn't help but laugh. He stopped teasing her and changed the topic. I heard that Shengwan Qian was taken to Qinggu Slope by them. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2042. Speaking of this, Chu Luiyue's expression became slightly restrained. Yes. This time, Taizu wanted to keep a low profile, so he had already said that there was no need to send him off and left with the others. Tang's costume is still very attractive to Taizu. No, it should be said that it was the same for all artificers. In the entire Divine Ruins world, after Tang Ku and Mr. Su, no one else had successfully refined a sacred artifact. Countless people had racked their brains for this, but they had never been able to break through that layer of shackles. Now that the opportunity had come, perhaps Tang's costume contained the opportunity and secret to refining a sacred artifact. Who wouldn't be tempted? Suddenly, Chu Luiyue thought of something and looked at Rong Xiu. I almost forgot that Rong Xiu is also a refiner. Moreover, it was the kind with extremely strong talent and strength. Doesn't he have any thoughts? Then, do you plan to go too? Chu Luiyue asked. Rong Xiu shook his head with an indifferent expression. No, I want you to go. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. Why? Although she was also a refiner, she wasn't particularly interested in this aspect. In addition, too many things had happened recently, so she didn't pay attention to this aspect. She didn't expect that Rong Xiu would take the initiative to ask her to go to Tang's costume. She pondered for a moment and said, my strength and talent as a refiner are not as good as yours. Even if I want to go, you should be more suitable, right? If Rong Xiu went, she might have some confidence. Needless to say, those who went to the Qinggu Slope this time would be the top refiners in the world. Even Taizu said that they might not be able to win, let alone her. The benefits were indeed tempting, but from the beginning, she didn't want to get involved in this mess. Rong Xiu's thin scarlet lips curled slightly, revealing a meaningful smile. No, no one is more suitable than you. Chu Luiyue looked at him blankly. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. Don't forget that you have 3 saint artifacts. Moreover, they were all made by Mr. Su. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment. He seemed to have understood something, but also seemed to have not. You're saying, maybe we can open Tang's costume with these sacred artifacts? But that's Tang's costume, not. Suddenly, her voice paused, and her eyes were filled with disbelief. Rong Xiu smiled. Back then, Tang Ku was at his peak. Although he didn't win that battle, he didn't lose either. It didn't affect his reputation much. However, after that battle, Mr. Su disappeared, and not long after, Tang Ku also disappeared without a trace. You mean, Tang Ku's disappearance at that time may have something to do with Mr. Su? It's just a guess. But Mr. Su is Tang Ku's only opponent, and you have 3 of Mr. Su's sacred weapons. You might have a chance to find something. Rong Xiu's words made Chu Luyue ponder. She had to admit that these words did make some sense. This guess was not impossible. She didn't think much of it at first, but after hearing Rong Xiu's words, she was really moved. After all, it was Tang Ku's tomb. Also, there's something you may not know. Rong Xiu paused. Back then, Tang Ku and Mr. Su fought at Peach Blossom Dock. Really? Chu Luyue was suddenly energized. She looked at him in surprise and disbelief. Very few people know about this because the place where they agreed to fight was very hidden. Other than the 2 of them, no one else knows about it. But at that time, a few top experts noticed that there was movement in Peach Blossom Dock, and they guessed. After that battle, the cultivation environment in Peach Blossom Dock changed a lot, so they confirmed their guesses. But at that time, Tang Ku was very famous. Everyone was worried that they would offend him if they leaked the news, so they tacitly kept it a secret. Over the years, some families and clans have been trying to make a move on Peach Blossom Dock, partly because of this. But since they didn't say anything, outsiders didn't know. After all, Peach Blossom Dock itself was very tempting. No wonder, Chu Luyue looked at the dot diagram in understanding. If that's the case, could the celestial shield have something to do with those 2 people? After a long while, she finally said, then, let's go and take a look. Chu Luyue made up her mind to go, but she was not in a hurry. For the next 3 days, she recuperated in her room and adjusted herself to the best state. After she dealt with all the things in Peach Blossom Dock, she decided to go. Rong Xiu naturally went with her. Yan Qing and Chang Wanzhou went with them. Yan Qing was Rong Xiu's confidant, so there was no problem with her going. The problem was, Chang Wanzhou. Master, do you have other plans for bringing Chang Wanzhou with you? In the room, Chu Luyue sat at the head of the table with an account book in front of her. The faint smell of ink wafted over. It was the new account book that Sanson had painstakingly written. She scanned it once and memorized everything clearly in her heart. Sanson was indeed good at calculating and making money. The current income was enough to support the entire Peach Blossom Dock, and there would even be a surplus. She nodded in satisfaction, closed the account book, and looked at Zhenyi in front of her. Actually, it's not that complicated. Although little Zhou has just become a high god, he is very powerful. You should be able to see that. Besides, he has been following me all this time, and he has done well in all aspects. Zhenyi cupped his fists. Since Master has already thought about it, I will naturally comply. Chu Luyue paused for a moment and said, I know. I know. Originally, you thought that I would send you with me. However, I will probably spend a lot of time on this trip. Peach Blossom Dock cannot be left unattended. After I leave, I will leave everything here to you. Zhenyi's expression became serious. Don't worry, Master. I will do my best. Chu Luyue was naturally not worried about Zhenyi. Imperial father and father might be coming soon. Also, it's time to gather the remaining people of the 13U. It's not appropriate for them to keep floating outside. At the very least, they should report their arrival first. And these people were the most suitable to be left at Zhenyi. Zhenyi nodded. I will not let you down. I hope that Master will return safely. Chu Liyue's red lips curled up slightly. Of course. Qinggu Slope. In the vast and boundless wilderness, huge rocks were scattered all over the place. From afar, they looked like small mountains, tall and straight. Stone forest. Family Way was behind this stone forest. It was rumored that this stone forest was as complicated as a maze, and it was difficult to pass through. Even the members of the Way clan would always fly from above and would rarely pass through here. However, at this moment, many people had already gathered outside the stone forest, which had always been deserted. And all of them had powerful auras. They were all experts. Because it was rumored that Tang Ku's tomb was here. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2043. Almost all the famous blacksmiths in the Divine Ruins world had already rushed here. Today was the day that the family Way had agreed to enter the stone forest together. Early in the morning, everyone had already gathered here, waiting for the start. I heard that Shengguan Jing is also here. That's right, he's standing in the corner. He's one of the best blacksmiths. With him around, I'm afraid the competition this time will be very intense. Isn't this within our expectations? Other than him, there are also many blacksmiths who haven't appeared for many years. Then doesn't that mean that we don't have any hope at all? Not necessarily. Until the very last moment, no one would know who would have the last laugh in the end, right? Besides, these people are powerful, but this time, we're going to open Tang Ku's tomb. Who here can be on par with them? Since that's the case, whether we win or lose, I think luck is more important. That's true, everyone was discussing in groups of 3 to 5. Although the family Way didn't specify the number of people allowed to participate together, most of them tacitly agreed to only select a few people to go together. There were also some who came alone. This kind of thing wasn't completely a competition of strength. No matter how many people came, it didn't mean much. It might be more convenient to travel light. Brother Shengguan, you've disappeared for such a long time. Now that you've come out, you're still the focus of everyone's attention. A few people teased him. Yes. Since we came here, those people haven't stopped talking about you. Haha. Brother Shengguan is still popular. If it wasn't for the competition this time, I'm afraid many people would want to come up and make friends with him. Shengguan Jing snorted and said indifferently, "They're not paying attention to me. They're not paying attention to me. They're paying attention to the person behind me." He was very clear about this point. Now, in the entire Divine Ruins world, who hadn't heard of the Peach Blossom Dock? The name of Shengguan Yu had already spread far and wide. She was very famous. As Yu Er's Taizu, he naturally couldn't avoid being noticed. He wasn't the only blacksmith here, and there were others whose strength was on par with him. The answer to why everyone's attention was solely on him was self-evident. That's not bad either. You, can be considered as basking in the glory of your family's Shengguan Jing did not hide the pride on his face. Of course. Their was naturally the best. Suddenly, a chill came from behind. He frowned and looked back, but everything was normal. Everyone was taken aback. Brother Shengguan, what are you looking at? Shengguan Jing's brows slowly relaxed, but his eyes were still cold. Nothing. Just now, he had clearly sensed a cold gaze staring at him from the dark. Right at this moment, several sounds of air being torn apart sounded out. All kinds of discussions came to a halt as everyone raised their heads and looked over. Someone from the family Way. Seeing the pattern on the left chest of their clothes, Shengguan Jing immediately recognized them. Sure enough, those people crossed the stone forest and landed in front of everyone. The person at the front was a middle-aged man. He was dressed in a long robe and had an elegant demeanor. I am the head of family Wei Zhe. Greetings, everyone. Everyone also greeted him politely. After all, this stone forest on the Chingu slope was the territory of the family Wei, so they still had to give face. Wei Zhe chuckled and exchanged a few words with everyone. Then, he cupped his hands at Shangguan Jing and asked in surprise, Senior Shangguan, didn't Shangguan Yu and Rongxiu come with you? Digression, 60 Clock mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2044. As soon as he said that, the surroundings quietened down. Everyone turned to look at him. Shangguan Yu's name was like thunder to one's ears. Who didn't know about the things that happened in Peach Blossom Dock? Quite a few of them were filled with curiosity about this. Shangguan Jing narrowed his eyes. Wei Zhe seemed to be a little strange. Why did he ask about you, and Rongxiu when there were so many people? Besides, there were already enough people here and most of them were top-notch blacksmiths. It didn't seem to matter if those two people didn't come, right? Shangguan Jing's mind raced, but he didn't show it on his face. He just laughed. Thank you for your concern, Family Wei. It's just that Peach Blossom Dock has been busy recently and Yu has a lot of things to deal with. Therefore, she can't get away for the time being. Rongxiu has always liked to accompany her. So, everyone had mixed feelings. Busy with things, a lot of things to deal with, what else could it be? Naturally, it was because they monopolized Peach Blossom Dock that they had these things to do. Wasn't it obvious that they were here to show off? Were they afraid that others didn't know that they were the new owners of Peach Blossom Dock? Every word he said revealed an undisguised sense of pride. The key point was that it was fine if he said this, but he actually helped those two show off their affection. Who in the Divine Ruins world hadn't heard of Rongxiu's fierce name? In Shangguan Jing's mouth, he became a good man who protected his wife at home. What was this? Wei Zhe choked and scolded in his heart. The older the ginger, the spicier it was. With just a few words, it made everyone lose their interest and choke them until they couldn't say anything. Since he had said so, how could others continue? Wei Zhe's lips moved and he laughed. Ha, I see. Senior Shangguan, don't misunderstand. I've heard of your name for a long time and want to meet these two. Let's not talk about Rongxiu first. Yu is now the owner of Yu and will have to interact with all of you in the future. If the family Wei wants to meet her, there will naturally be a chance. Shangguan Jing interrupted him with a smile. Wei Zhe's chest felt stuffy. What he meant was that Chu Luiyue would be on the same level as these family heads in the future, and not just anyone could meet her. Senior Shangguan Jing. Shangguan Jing's seniority here was very high, so even Wei Zhe had to be polite to him. After exchanging blows, Wei Zhe didn't manage to get the answer he wanted to ask. Thus, he didn't continue. Instead, he turned to the crowd and changed the topic. We're all smart people, so let's not beat around the bush. Today, everyone is here for Senior Tang Ku's tomb. Senior Tang Ku was a peerless top-notch weapon refiner. Ever since he went missing, there had been no news of him. Now, he had finally found his tomb. Pfft, Shangguan, don't believe him. He's just making it sound nice. An old man lowered his voice and said disdainfully. I heard that the family Wei was very excited when they found Tang Ku's tomb hidden here. However, they tried all kinds of methods but failed to open it. Instead, they suffered heavy casualties. In addition, the news was leaked, so they started to ask everyone to work together. Shangguan Jing's mouth twitched. That's expected. Everyone present was smart. No one took Wei Zhe's words to heart. They just listened. To be fair, anyone who was involved in this matter would probably make the same choice. Who wouldn't want to monopolize such a good thing? The family Wei couldn't keep it a secret anymore, so they took a step back. In fact, there was nothing wrong with that. As Shengguan Jing spoke, he stared at Wei Zhe again. That gaze just now didn't seem to come from Wei Zhe, but Wei Zhe was clearly targeting them. It was really strange. Wei Zhe glanced at the sky and said, "I won't say anything else so as not to waste everyone's time. To tell you the truth, this stone chaos forest is extremely dangerous. Even my Wei clan members rarely enter it. After entering, please be careful." After he finished speaking, he turned around and looked at the stone forest. Ever since they found out that Tang Ke's tomb was here, the family Wei had sent many people. Some died, some were injured, but they couldn't find any useful information. With so many people here this time, they didn't know if there would be any progress. Wei Zhe gritted his teeth. "Everyone, please." With that, he took the lead and walked forward. The few members of the Wei family behind him also walked in. The rest of the people also moved one after another, their figures gradually disappearing into the stone forest. After entering the stone forest, everyone followed behind Wei Zhe and the others. The stones here were grayish-white, strangely shaped, and very majestic. It was quiet all around, and only the sound of everyone's footsteps could be heard. As Shengguan Jing and the others walked, they carefully observed their surroundings. Soon, someone noticed that something was wrong. "Did you notice that these stones seem to be moving?" Someone asked in surprise. As soon as he said that, many people immediately agreed. "You noticed it too?" "I thought I was the only one who thought so." "So everyone is the same." "The stones outside are constantly changing, so it's impossible to tell where we are. Such an environment is almost like a maze. If we enter the depths and want to leave, I'm afraid it will be much more troublesome." Hearing these discussions, Wei Zhe laughed and said, "Everyone, don't be nervous." "Everyone, there's no need to be nervous. This has been the case since the day the stone forest appeared. It can be called an illusion or a maze. In short, it will indeed cause some trouble. However, everyone is powerful. If you want to leave, you can leave directly from above." As he spoke, he raised his hand and pointed. Above them, a long rainbow bridge stretched across. They had just passed by from above. Hearing this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. However, Shengguan Jing frowned slightly, and an inexplicable sense of uneasiness arose in his heart. If they could really evacuate quickly, why would the family Wei suffer so many casualties? They must have suffered a loss, which was why they were willing to let others come. However, after the group traveled for about an hour, nothing unexpected happened. Shengguan Jing suppressed his worry and followed the crowd with a calm expression. Finally, Wei Zhe stopped in front. Shengguan Jing stared ahead. This was a rare piece of empty land, and there was only a huge rock placed in the middle of it. The shape of the huge rock was irregular, and it was completely red. The most eye-catching thing was that there was a bronze door ring in the middle. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2045. Shengguan Jing took a closer look at it. The bronze doorknob was exquisitely crafted and thick. Although there was a layer of bronze rust on it, one could vaguely see that it used to be engraved with fine lines. How could there be such a door knocker on a perfectly good piece of rock? Wei Zhe pointed at the bronze doorknob and said, "You've all seen it. As you can see, this stone is quite different from the other stones in the stone forest. We think it's very likely that it's a door. It's very likely that it's the door to Tang Ke's tomb." There was a commotion in the crowd. Obviously, Wei Zhe's words had shaken them. This guess was not impossible. Although this blood-red boulder looked very strange and didn't look like a door, the bronze doorknob on it was even stranger. It made people think more about it. "Wei Clan's head, may I ask if you've already attempted to enter?" someone asked. Wei Zai's face darkened and he nodded. To be honest, we've tried many methods, but we still can't open it. Moreover, there's a layer of extremely powerful restriction on the bronze doorknob. Once we get close to it, it will trigger a terrifying attack. Because of this, family Wei suffered a great loss. They had no experience at that time. How could they have known that a small doorknob would be so dangerous? Many people looked at each other when they heard what he said. It's just a doorknob. How could it be so dangerous? At least for now, there was nothing special about it. There was not even the slightest fluctuation on it. Hearing this, Wei Zai curled the corners of his mouth without a smile. That's all I, Wei Zai, have to say. If anyone doesn't believe me, you can come forward and verify it yourself. After saying that, he walked to the side and gave up his position. It seemed that he was really waiting for someone to go over and try it himself. After a short period of silence, a man finally came forward. Ha! Family Wei's words really make people curious. This old man wants to see just how powerful this thing is. This was an old man with a face full of vicissitudes. However, his eyes were extremely bright, flickering with a shrewd and powerful light. Sheng Wanjing did not know this person, but judging from the aura around him, he should be a weapon-refining venerable. Wei Zai chuckled. Please. The crowd's gazes all landed on the old man. He headed towards the blood-red boulder. After taking a step forward, he finally stopped. They were already so close, but nothing happened. He chuckled. Could it be that this old man and Senior Tang Ku are fated? As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and pulled the bronze door knocker. Bang! A terrifying explosion suddenly rang out. At the same time, a red flame appeared out of nowhere and wrapped around the old man's body. Ah! There was a short scream of fear, but it quickly stopped. The old man's body began to disappear under the flames at a speed visible to the naked eye. Before anyone could react, the ball of flame disappeared without a trace. As for the old man, he had completely died. Other than a few drops of blood on the ground, there was no trace of him at all. There was still a burning smell in the air, and it was very pungent. Wei Zai sneered in his heart and quickly scanned the surroundings. Almost everyone was deeply shocked by this scene and could not recover for a long time. A weapon-refining venerable died just like that. My family Wei has suffered a lot, but none of you took it seriously before. Wei Zai shook his head, and there was a hint of regret and pain on his face. Now, do you believe what I said just now? Dead silence. Everyone looked at the bronze door knocker again. Their eyes had changed from the initial curiosity and excitement to deep suspicion and shock. What is this? At the same time, the void outside the stone forest fluctuated. Then, a red scroll appeared. A few figures walked out of it. It was Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu's group. Chu Luiyue raised her wrist, and the scroll quickly flew back into her hand. This flowing cloud flying map is really useful. She smiled and raised her eyebrows. Although they set off a few days later, their speed was extremely fast. Rong Xiu surveyed the surroundings and said, "You're right. They should have already gone in. But it seems that it hasn't been long." Chu Luiyue looked at it seriously and then nodded slightly. She also sensed that there seemed to be Taizu's aura here. Tang Ku's tomb is inside. She put away the flowing cloud flying map and looked at the stone forest in front of her. There was no barrier outside, and it seemed that one could enter at will. This is family Wei's territory, and they didn't send anyone to guard it. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. Rong Xiu's lips curled slightly. There is only one possibility for this. There is no need for anyone to guard this place. Even if there is someone guarding this place, it is useless and meaningless. It was very likely that Tang Ku's tomb was hidden here, and it could be considered an extremely precious treasure land. The Wei clan wouldn't be so magnanimous as to ignore this place. Rong Xiu's words made a lot of sense. Chu Luiyue nodded. Then let's go in and take a look. With that, she walked straight forward. Just as she walked to the edge, she suddenly stopped. Rong Xiu asked, "What's wrong?" Chu Luiyue looked sideways at him. Rong Xiu, did you hear anything just now? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2046. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes. You mean, the sound that came from inside? Chu Luiyue nodded. It seemed that he heard it too. It sounded like something exploded, she murmured, but she was a little uncertain. Perhaps there were people fighting. After all, everyone who entered this stone forest was aiming for Tang Ke's tomb. They were competitors, so it was normal for them to fight with each other. Rong Xiu glanced inside. Standing here, he could only see the huge rocks, but not the scenery inside. No one could say for sure what had happened. We'll know when we go in, Rong Xiu said. Chu Luiyue nodded. Then let's go in too. As she said that, she was about to go forward. Wait. Rong Xiu suddenly called out to her, then walked forward and held her hand. The stone forest is full of danger, and it's easy to get lost. Be careful. The warmth of the iron came from his broad and strong palm. Chu Luiyue felt a little relieved, and the corners of her lips curled up. As she said that, she moved her wrist, and Scarlet Heaven Sword appeared in her hand. This way, we should be able to find Taizu and the others faster. Scarlet Heaven Sword had inherited the soul of the Dragon Abyss Sword, so it had a subtle connection with Taizu. With this, it would be easy for Chu Luiyue to find Taizu's traces. This was also a major reason why she felt calm. After that, they all stepped into the stone forest and quickly disappeared. After walking for a while, Chu Luiyue and the others noticed the problem. This chaotic stone forest is just like what the rumors say. It is as complicated as a maze. Chu Luiyue looked around and murmured. If it weren't for Scarlet Heaven Sword, they would have wasted a lot of time here. If Tang Ke's tomb is really here, then why did he choose this place? Chu Luiyue couldn't figure it out. Although the heaven and earth energy here was abundant, it was not the best. At the very least, it couldn't compare to the Yuntian Tower. As for the environment, there were only a few giant rocks around. Other than that, there was nothing else. He really couldn't see anything special about it. This tomb might not have been chosen by him. Rong Xiu said calmly, after all, until now, no one knows how he died. Chu Luiyue blinked and nodded in agreement. That's true, when the Tang clan was exterminated, he didn't even appear. Either he was already dead at that time, or he was as good as dead. If he had calmly faced death himself, logically speaking, it would have been impossible for him to not know about the Tang clan. Thinking about it, Tang Ke's death was more likely to be an accident. Bang! Another strange explosion could be heard coming from the front. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu stopped at the same time and looked at each other. Compared to the previous time, the sound this time was clearly much closer, and the air seemed to be exuding a faint smell of blood. Something really happened. And the location of the incident should not be far from them. Taizu and the others should be over there. Chu Luiyue's eyes sharpened. Just as he was about to move, he was suddenly stopped by Rong Xiu. Wait first. He lowered his voice, frowned slightly, and looked forward. Chu Luiyue immediately held his breath and followed his line of sight. Yan Qing and Chang Wanzhou reacted extremely quickly. The moment Rong Xiu gave the order, they immediately concealed their figures and auras. Although this place was flat and spacious, there were a lot of giant rocks, which made it very convenient for hiding. What's wrong? Is there something wrong? Chu Luiyue asked in a low voice. As soon as he finished speaking, a biting cold aura suddenly attacked. Chief! Boom! A giant rock not far in front of them seemed to have been hit by some force, making a loud noise and shaking slightly at the same time. Then, there was a muffled groan. Dark red blood slowly flowed from the ground behind the rock. Chu Luiyue's pupils suddenly contracted. The person who hit the giant rock just now seemed to be a person. That should be a high god powerhouse. Rong Xiu's voice was very soft. A high god powerhouse might not be a big deal in the Divine Ruins world. However, one had to know that almost all the people who came here today were top-notch craftsmen. Most of them might be mediocre in martial arts cultivation, but they were definitely outstanding in crafting. A powerful blacksmith was more valuable than dozens of high gods, or even Her Eminence. Now that he had died, it was obviously a great loss. What's going on over there? Why didn't I hear any sounds of fighting? Chu Luiyue's brows were tightly knitted. She carefully observed everything around her, but she did not find anything unusual. That person seemed to have suddenly flown over, hit the rock, and died on the spot. However, the incident itself was very strange. Even an ordinary high god powerhouse would not die so easily after being hit like this. However, that person didn't even have the time to let out a groan before he died. Wasn't this a little too fast? Could it be that he was already dead? No. When he flew over, he still had his aura. Rong Xiu denied Chu Luiyue's guess. His strength level was higher than Chu Luiyue's, so his observation of the situation was more detailed than hers. Hearing his words, Chu Luiyue's doubts deepened. This person's death was too strange. Suddenly, Rong Xiu grabbed her waist and pulled her into his arms. Come with me. He changed his direction and took a detour from another path. Yan Qing and Chang Wanzhou followed closely behind. After going around a few corners, they finally stopped. Chu Luiyue was about to speak when she suddenly heard a man's voice not far away. Everyone, if we can't think of a way to get out of here, we're all going to die here. The voice was low and cold, as if he was suppressing his anger. Chu Luiyue immediately quieted down and waited with bated breaths. At this moment, the few of them were hiding behind a huge rock and could not see what was going on over there. However, they could hear the voice very clearly. Perhaps because Rong Xiu had deliberately concealed his aura, they were not far away from those people, but no one noticed them. Wei Zhe. Didn't you say that if there were any accidents, we would be able to leave from above? What's going on now? This was another person's stern questioning. Wei Zhe. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. She had heard this person's name before. He was the head of family Wei. Then, a somewhat hoarse and weak voice sounded. Everyone, my family Wei really didn't mean to deceive you. Previously, our people used this method to escape, but for some reason, it doesn't work now. Even if we really want to do something, why should we gamble with our lives? His words were full of helplessness. Hearing this, Chu Luiyue subconsciously looked up. Above the sky, a stream of light stretched across, like a bridge suspended in the air. This should be what they were talking about. What's the point of saying this now? So many people have died. The only way now is to open Tang Ku's tomb. Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up. This was the voice of Taizu. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2047. Chu Luiyue felt a little relieved when he heard Taizu's voice, which was full of vigor and seemed to be safe and sound. Judging from their words, they should have encountered some trouble and suffered many casualties. Senior Shengwan, it's easy for you to say. We have been here for such a long time and have used all our means. But Tang's tomb still doesn't show any signs of opening. What should we do? An impatient man's voice sounded with a hint of sarcasm. You are a great senior. Back then, you were already all-powerful. Now that 1,000 years have passed, your strength must have improved again. Why don't you think of a way? I believe that Senior Shengwan won't let us down. Chu Liuyue's eyes turned cold. There was a hint of coercion in his voice. But from the looks of it, Tang's tomb seemed to be nearby. Shengwan Jing laughed and said unhurriedly, You really think too highly of me. I just barely managed to keep my life. How can an old man like me be compared to all of you in your prime? The man continued to be aggressive. Senior Shengwan, why are you so modest? Who doesn't know that you fought the 9 dragons alone and still didn't lose? Moreover, your junior Shengwan Yu is now the lord of the Peach Blossom Dock. Senior Shengwan should be much better than us to be able to cultivate in a place like the Peach Blossom Dock, right? You haven't tried to make a move since you came here today. Could it be that you don't even care about Tang's tomb now that you have the Peach Blossom Dock? These words were really making people hate him. How many people in the world of divine ruins coveted the Peach Blossom Dock? Now that the Peach Blossom Dock had fallen into Chu Liuyue's hands, although the people didn't dare to have any thoughts about the Peach Blossom Dock because of Yi Wentao's miserable end, it was inevitable that they were jealous. It was fine if he didn't mention it, but now that he mentioned it, it really poked a lot of people's sore spots. Shengwan Jing looked at the person who spoke with a smile. What are you talking about? If I wasn't interested in Tang's tomb, why would I spend so much effort to come here today? The reason why I didn't make a move is that I'm afraid of death. It's not so complicated. As soon as he said this, everyone quieted down. The field fell into a strange silence. Although everyone understood this, with Shengwan Jing's status, how could he say it out loud without any hesitation? Didn't he feel embarrassed? He said it so bluntly that it made it difficult for others to respond. He had personally admitted that he was afraid of death. If he continued to ask, wasn't that the same as forcing him to die? Not many people would dare to do such a thing. Shengwan Jing ignored the various gazes of the people around him. He stroked his beard and sighed. Sigh, there's something you don't know. Even though I was barely able to preserve my life all those years ago, my divine body was unconscious, and my soul had dispersed. If it wasn't for my Yu's help, I would have really been unable to wake up. How could he still chat and laugh with everyone here? Therefore, this old man cherishes his life very much, very much. Everyone was speechless. What else could the bystanders say when the words had already been said? He had already died once, and he didn't want to lose his life again. There was nothing to be responsible for. After a long while, the provocative man sneered and said indifferently, In that case, I'm afraid you have no fate with the supreme treasure and inheritance left behind by Senior Tangku. Shengwan Jing was still smiling. It's fine. It's fine. I'm just here to join in the fun today. Speaking of which, the new generation excels the old. Since everyone is so powerful, you will definitely be able to successfully open Tang's tomb. At that time, if I can witness it with my own eyes, I will be satisfied. His words made the other party lose his temper. Just here to join in the fun. Who would believe that? However, everyone who came here had a certain level of ambition. However, Shengwan Jing was a complete old fox. Facing these, he didn't take the bait at all. Rong Xiao smiled slightly and glanced at Chu Luyue. Your temper is really similar to Senior Shengwan's. Chu Luyue rubbed his nose and snorted, but the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. Of course. Sometimes, one had to be thick-skinned. One had to be more flexible. One would rather trick others than be tricked by others. Wei Zhe looked left and right and finally came out to be the peacemaker. Senior Shangwan's words make sense. The most important thing now is to think of a way to open Tang Ke's tomb. It's not a good idea to keep wasting time here. Since we can't leave, then. If we join forces now, we might have a chance of survival. His words quickly gained the approval of the crowd. Wei Clan head, no matter what, this stone forest is still your Wei Clan's territory. Could it be that you really don't have any countermeasures? Someone asked. Wei Zhe wanted to say something but stopped. This pause immediately attracted everyone's attention. Actually, it can't be considered a proper method. It's just a guess. As he spoke, he pointed at the blood-red boulder. Senior Tang Ke is the top blacksmith in the world. If we try to enter his tomb rashly, it will definitely be very difficult to succeed. In my opinion, the best way to open a blacksmith's tomb is probably Tianlei as a guide. There might be a glimmer of hope. Tianlei. Everyone was stunned for a moment before they fell into deep thought. Come to think of it, Wei Zhe's words don't seem unreasonable. Since there's no other way for the time being, why don't we give it a try? Someone quickly made up his mind. Then, the rest of the people agreed one after another. Wei Zhe cupped his fists. In that case, I'll give it a try first. What do you all think? No one objected. If this method could open that door, then Wei Zhe would be the first person to enter Tang Ke's tomb. There was no need to talk about the benefits. This was also the main reason why the previous batch of people had tried it one after another. With the benefits in front of them, they couldn't help but be tempted. However, after a series of setbacks, everyone realized that it was extremely dangerous to take the lead. Furthermore, they would basically die and have their souls destroyed. They wouldn't even have the chance to escape. Everyone couldn't help but be wary. No matter how tempting the temptation ahead was, they had to be alive to enjoy it, right? Wei Zhe was the head of the family Wei. It was undoubtedly the most appropriate for him to speak. Head of the family Wei, please. Wei Zhe nodded and walked to the blood-red boulder. He was 3 steps away from the bronze door ring. His expression was solemn and his brows furrowed. It was impossible for him not to be nervous. However, he had a plan in mind. Then, a halberd appeared in his hand. It was black and green and extremely sharp. Everyone's expression changed when they saw the halberd. 10,000 Peaks halberd. The reason why they were so shocked was because this was a sacred artifact. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 2048. The Halberd of 10,000 Peaks. So this thing is in the family Wei. Chu Luiyue was also surprised to hear the continuous exclamations. He looked up at Rongxiu. Didn't they say that the Halberd of 10,000 Peaks has been missing for thousands of years? Rongxiu narrowed his eyes. The family Wei has never revealed this information before. This thing, it's very likely that they just got it not long ago. Why do you think so? Chu Liuyue's brows twitched. Maybe they got it long ago, but they hid it very well. Rongxiu's lips curled into a half-smile. Wei Zhe isn't someone who can keep his cool. Although the family Wei was also a first-class aristocratic family, it was still slightly inferior to the Yuntian Tower that Rongxiu was in. In the world of divine ruins, it was an extremely honorable thing for any aristocratic family to have a divine artifact. If the family Wei had it long ago, they would have announced it to the world. If I'm not wrong, they got the halberd of 10,000 Peaks after knowing about the existence of Tang Ke's tomb. Wei Zhe deliberately suppressed the news and waited for today. Meeting Chu Liuyue's confused gaze, Rongxiu chuckled and explained. The halberd of 10,000 Peaks is the divine artifact that Tang Ke refined back then. With Tangku's divine artifact, there might be a chance of success in opening the door to her tomb. At that very moment, everyone present was thinking the same thing. When they saw Wei Zhe take out the halberd of 10,000 peaks, they immediately understood something. Their expressions immediately changed. Wei Zhe. When did you get the halberd of 10,000 peaks? Wei Zhe narrowed his eyes. I don't think I need to tell you this, right? Humph. Who doesn't know that the halberd of 10,000 peaks is one of the 5 divine artifacts that Tangku refined back then? With this item, it would be easy for you to open Tangku's tomb. Why go through so much trouble to find us? Wei Zhe, what are you planning? Wei Zhe chuckled. Everyone has really misunderstood me. I have no enmity with any of you, so why would I harm you? In fact, I did want to use this thing to try to open Tangku's tomb, but before I could do it, the news had already spread. Helplessly, this idea could only be put aside for the time being and wait for everyone to come together before trying again. Shengguan Jing suddenly said, if that's the case, why didn't you say anything at the beginning? Why did you only speak after so many people had died? This was also what the others were most concerned about. If Wei Zhe had taken it out earlier, those people wouldn't have had to die. Wei Zhe smiled bitterly. Senior Shengguan, I didn't expect this place to be so dangerous. Originally, I thought that since we are all peak existences in the Divine Ruins world, we would definitely have a solution. Besides, if I had spoken at that time, then, it would probably have attracted discussion, right? In other words, he was doing this for the sake of fairness. Otherwise, everyone would be here and he would be the first to do so. It would seem like he was deliberately snatching it, only now that no one dared to rashly step forward, it was the most appropriate time for him to make a move. Everyone was speechless. Shengguan Jing frowned. Wei Zhe's words and actions seemed to be understandable. However, if he did this, those people who had died earlier would be wronged. However, everyone was in a competitive relationship. Speaking of which, Wei Zhe didn't have the obligation or responsibility to be responsible for the lives of others. It was fine to say that he was selfish, but no one was in the position to criticize him. This Wei Zhe. He was really scheming. Wei Zhe sneered in his heart, then retracted his gaze and clenched the 1,000 Peaks halberd in his hand. This was his family Wei's territory. Tangku's tomb should be theirs. These people came from all over to fight for it, yet they still had the nerve to say so much. Did they really think that his family Wei was easy to bully? Fortunately, he was lucky enough to obtain this 1,000 Peaks halberd. With this, his chances of opening Tangku's tomb would be greatly increased. Thinking of this, Wei Zhe felt a wave of excitement in his heart. He was also a weapon refiner, so he was naturally curious and yearning for Tangku's tomb. As long as he could enter, he might be able to obtain the treasures or inheritance left behind by Tangku. Wei Zhe's heart was burning. He couldn't help but lick his lips, transfer the force in his body, and pour it all into the 1,000 Peaks halberd. Then, he held the 1,000 Peaks halberd tightly in one hand and stabbed forward. Buzz! A strange buzzing sound suddenly came from the huge blood-red stone. Immediately after, the bronze door ring moved without any wind, as if an invisible hand had pulled it up and buckled it gently. Knock knock. A crisp knocking sound came from the door. Everyone was shocked. It moved. This is really a door. Wei Zhe's eyes were fixed on it. His heart was beating violently, and the blood in his body seemed to be boiling. The sky quickly darkened. Dark clouds gathered, and the wind whistled. Tianlei, like silver snakes, appeared one after another, shuttling back and forth in the clouds. The momentum was great. The movement was astonishing. Shengguan Jing raised his eyes to take a look. A sacred artifact is indeed extraordinary. A casual movement can trigger such a magnificent scene, even if he wanted to refine a venerable artifact, he might not be able to trigger so many Tianlei in such a short time. The Thousand Peaks Halberd, one of the 10 great sacred artifacts, was indeed worthy of its reputation. Rumble. A Tianlei fell with a loud bang. It went straight for Wei Zhe. The dazzling light almost made people unable to open their eyes. Some of the weaker ones couldn't withstand the pressure and unconsciously took a few steps back. However, most of the people present still insisted on not moving a single step. If Tang Ke's tomb was really opened, even if they couldn't get first place, they had to try their best to run in front. Boom! The Tianlei struck the Thousand Peaks halberd in Wei Zhe's hand. However, the moment the imposing Tianlei fell on the Thousand Peaks halberd, it was instantly devoured. An inch-long, silver-white pattern appeared. Wei Zhe was the closest to it, so he saw it the clearest. For a moment, he was shocked and amazed. As expected of one of the 10 great sacred artifacts, such a terrifying Tianlei force was completely devoured in the blink of an eye. It contained so much energy, but in the end, only one pattern was awakened. If the Thousand Peaks halberd was completely awakened, how awe-inspiring would that be? In fact, this was the first time Wei Zhe officially made a move after obtaining the Thousand Peaks halberd. Therefore, even he himself was shocked. After a short moment of shock, his heart was filled with endless excitement and joy. With such a treasure in hand, Tang Ke's tomb would definitely open. Then, several more Tianlei fell one after another. The aura on the Thousand Peaks halberd became more and more powerful. The bronze doorknob kept swaying. And the buzzing sound coming from inside seemed to be getting clearer and clearer. Finally, the last Tianlei was also devoured by the Thousand Peaks halberd. The last dark pattern on the halberd lit up. Wei Zhe took a deep breath and stabbed forward fiercely. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2049. Clang. An ear-piercing sound of sharp weapons colliding was heard. Everyone held their breaths as they stared intently at the screen. However, Wei Zhe's expression changed from complacency to shock and confusion. Finally, it was filled with disbelief. In front of him, Wanfeng's halberd was pressed against the blood-red stone, but it did not budge at all. He widened his eyes in shock and could not believe what he was seeing. Then, he exerted force again and stabbed forward. But nothing changed. There wasn't even the slightest mark left on the rock. This so-called door had no intention of opening at all. Because he exerted force, a dull pain came from his perlicue. However, Wei Zhe had no time to care about it. How could this be? How could this be? The power on Wanfeng's halberd had been completely awakened, and the strange stone in front of him was still buzzing. But, it just could not be opened. Family Wei, what's going on? At this moment, the surrounding people also noticed that something was wrong. They looked at each other with puzzled and suspicious expressions. Wei Zhe was embarrassed. He tried to retrieve Wanfeng's halberd, but there was not a single mark on it. However, that voice did not disappear. Even, the bronze door knocker was still clinging to the door. Seeing all this, Wei Zhe's heart sank, and his face turned green and white. He thought that this movement was caused by him, but in the end, it was not. And the surrounding people, seeing this scene, how could they not understand? What's going on? Isn't Wanfeng's halberd a sacred weapon refined by Tang Ke? Why can't it be opened? This thing can't be fake, right? Looking at the movement just now, this thing must be real. It's also true that it can't open this door. Ha! After all this time, it turns out that this method won't work. Family Wei really worked for nothing. The crowd discussed in low voices. All kinds of words reached Wei Zhe's ears, and his heart was in turmoil. His temples were throbbing like a ball of fire that was about to burst out from his chest. Ridicule. Ridicule. Contempt. Those gazes made him feel as if there were daggers at his back. His entire body stiffened as he stood rooted to the ground. His mind was completely blank and in complete chaos. Clearly, everything was progressing smoothly. How could it be? If even the sacred weapon that Tang Ku had refined herself could not open the tomb, then, who else in this world, and what else, could do it? That's not right. Shengguan Jing frowned and stared ahead, muttering softly. The few people around him looked over. What's wrong? Shengguan Jing raised his chin. Wei Zhe didn't move, but the movement on the rock didn't stop. With his reminder, the others were also stunned. Taking a closer look, he realized that this was indeed the case. Perhaps Tang Ku's tomb has sensed the existence of the 10,000 Peaks halberd and caused this commotion. But even with Wei Zhe's own strength, he still couldn't open it. Someone guessed. Shengguan Jing said nothing. He still felt that something was wrong. His suspicions gradually increased when he saw the scene before him. If the 10,000 Peaks halberd could trigger these senses, why couldn't it open? Family Wei, could it be that your strength isn't enough and that's why you couldn't open it? Someone in the crowd finally raised his voice and asked. These words were a little unpleasant to hear. They were just short of directly saying that it was because Wei Zhe was incompetent. But Wei Zhe couldn't refute it now. He suddenly sneered, turned to look at the person who spoke, and handed over the 10,000 Peaks halberd in his hand. If you have the confidence, why don't you give it a try yourself? Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect him to have such a reaction. That person was stunned for a moment and then snorted. Family Wei, you really like to joke. This 10,000 Peaks halberd is a sacred weapon. Once it recognizes a master, it can't be used anymore. Are you saying this on purpose to embarrass? This 10,000 Peaks halberd hasn't recognized a master yet. Wei Zhe's words immediately caused the scene to fall into dead silence. At this moment, all the sounds of discussion and clamor completely disappeared. Countless pairs of eyes looked at him in shock, as if doubting the authenticity of his words. Wei Zhe sneered. At this time, I, Wei Zhe, have no need to lie. If anyone doesn't believe me, you can come forward and try it yourself. Since everyone thinks that I, Wei Zhe, am not capable enough, then I'll just hand over this thing. Whoever can use this 10,000 Peaks halberd to open Tang Ku's tomb, I'll say if impressed. As long as anyone has the ability to make the 10,000 Peaks halberd recognize a master and obtain all the items in Tang Ku's tomb, Wei Zhe will have no objections. As he spoke, he flung his wrist and actually threw the thing forward. The 10,000 Peaks halberd floated quietly in the air. Countless dazzling streams of light refined by Tianlei were still flickering on the halberd, giving it an imposing aura. Many people looked at each other. Such a temptation could be said to be great. But Wei Zhe was Family Wei's Family Wei after all. He was the king of equipment refinement and a god. With such strength, he could definitely be considered one of the best among these people. If even Wei Zhe couldn't do it, then how many people present could give it a try? Even the person who had mocked him earlier was somewhat hesitant. His strength was similar to Wei Zhe's. If he also couldn't do it now, then, wouldn't it be embarrassing? Wei Zhe looked around and sneered in his heart. He was standing closest to them, so he knew best that the commotion inside was not caused by the 10,000 Peaks halberd. It would be the same no matter who came. This is a little interesting. I'm willing to give it a try. Chapter 2050. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. The person who spoke was Shengguan Jing. Wei Zhe sneered. Senior Shengguan, have you made up your mind? Didn't you say just now that you're here to join in the fun? Shangguan Jing said with a smile. What's there to hesitate about? Since the leader of the family Wei is willing to offer the long halberd of Wan Feng, why can't we give it a try? Besides, I'm indeed here to join in the fun, but it seems that everyone doesn't seem to be willing to move. In that case, I can only do it myself. We can't just stand here and watch, can we? Wei Zhe was rendered speechless by his words. If that's the case, then, please. With that, he took a few steps back. It seemed that he was really going to watch from the sidelines. Shangguan Jing wasn't afraid of embarrassing himself, so what was there to worry about? Shangguan, are you really going to go over? The people next to him wanted to dissuade him, but Shangguan Jing shook his head with a smile. What's the big deal? Although the leader of the family Wei failed, he's still fine, isn't he? Since there's no loss, why not give it a try? Seeing that Shangguan Jing had made up his mind, the rest of the people stopped trying to dissuade him. Then, be careful. Shangguan Jing still had a smile on his face as he strode forward. At this moment, all eyes were focused on him. Shangguan Jing came to the middle, raised his hand, and took the long halberd of Wan Feng in his hand. He first waited for a while, then injected some of his power into it and raised his eyebrows. As expected, this thing is still ownerless. Only in this way would he be able to channel his power into Wei Zhe's body after he had used it. However, without an owner, the power that this thing could exert was extremely small. Hearing Shangguan Jing's words, many people were even more shaken. Sacred artifacts were extremely intelligent, and they would always choose their own masters. Without that opportunity, it would be useless even if one held onto it for 10 or 100 years. In his hands, he couldn't display the true power of the holy artifact at all. No wonder Wei Zhe was so assured to let it out. However, judging from the current situation, the Thousand Peaks halberd didn't seem to recognize Shangguan Jing as its master. Wei Zhe closed his eyes, and his tense heart relaxed a little. It was impossible for him not to be nervous. Ever since he had obtained the 10,000 Peaks halberd, he hadn't been acknowledged, and he felt vexed. It was like guarding a mountain of gold, but not being able to spend a single cent. This feeling was truly unbearable. Just now, he had thrown out the myriad Peaks halberd in a fit of anger. Now that he had calmed down, he felt some regret. Now, he could only hope that these people would not be recognized by the Thousand Peaks halberd. Shangguan Jing sized up Wan Feng's halberd for a while before he took it in his hand. He looked up with a solemn expression, and at the same time, he began to mobilize the energy in his body. Then, he suddenly thrust it forward. Clang! The crisp sound of a collision rang out again. Everything in front of him was still motionless. His reaction was exactly the same as when Wei Zhe made his move. Shangguan Jing frowned and stopped without hesitation. At this moment, he also realized that something was wrong. The commotion inside was not caused by Wan Feng's halberd. Under such circumstances, no matter what, it couldn't be opened. Wei Zhe crossed his arms and laughed. Senior Shangguan, how do you feel after trying it yourself? I think, it doesn't seem to be any different from what I did just now, right? Shangguan Jing didn't care about his mockery. It would be strange if Tang's tomb was really so easy to open. Moreover, the key to opening the door was clearly not the 10,000 Peaks halberd. What else was there to say? This 10,000 Peaks halberd is not the key to opening Tang's tomb. Shangguan Jing threw the 10,000 Peaks halberd casually and said. Wei Zhe didn't expect him to reveal the secret so straightforwardly, and he was a little angry for a moment. However, after thinking about it carefully, this matter couldn't be hidden, and there was nothing to mind. He took a deep breath and calmed his emotions. Senior Shangguan, what do you mean? Someone asked. This 10,000 Peaks halberd was refined by Tang Ke personally back then. How can it be useless? If it can't even do this, then they really had no choice. Shangguanjing focused his eyes and looked at the bronze doorknob again. This was actually the most strange thing about him. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. He vaguely felt that the patterns on the bronze doorknob seemed to be somewhat familiar. It seemed like he had seen it somewhere before. He took a step forward. A ball of red flames appeared again. In an instant, it was about to surround Shangguanjing. Be careful. No one expected Shangguanjing to suddenly step forward. He had clearly learned his lesson previously. Once he approached rashly, he would definitely be attacked. Shangguanjing reacted extremely quickly. This time, he clearly saw that the flames were surging out from the bronze doorknob. His expression turned stern, and he immediately set up a barrier around his body. However, at the same time, the force in his body seemed to be affected by the flames, and it surged rapidly as if it was boiling. The scorching temperature quickly invaded his body. Poof! A ball of red flames suddenly burst out from his left shoulder. Shangguanjing thought to himself, "Oh no. This is a sign that I'm about to explode and die." However, at this moment, a crimson golden flame suddenly flew over and surrounded him. Those red flames were devoured in the blink of an eye. Who? Everyone heard the commotion and immediately turned to look. Then, he saw a slender and exquisite figure approaching at high speed. Chu Luiyue grabbed Taizu's arm and was about to retreat. Suddenly, the bronze doorknob shone brightly. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2051. Taizu immediately recognized Chu Luiyue and exclaimed in surprise. Before he could finish his sentence, he looked up and saw a flash of light behind her. Chu Luiyue also sensed that something was wrong and turned around to look. The rust on the bronze doorknob was peeling off quickly. A vast and sacred aura spread out from it. Suddenly, her eyes narrowed and she gasped. As the light flashed, she could vaguely see that the patterns on the bronze door were very similar to the secret inscriptions on the armillary shield. The crimson flames around Shangguanjing had already faded away. The two figures appeared clearly in front of everyone. When the crowd saw this, they were all shocked. Although Wei Zhe had never seen Chu Luiyue before, he immediately guessed her identity. Shangguanyu. Why is she here? Previously, everyone had gathered in the stone forest and entered together. How did she suddenly appear here? Since she was here, then, where was Rongxiu? Family Wei, long time no see. How are you? A deep and pleasant voice sounded like the wind plucking the strings of a zither. Wei Zhe's heart sank when he heard the voice. He immediately turned around and saw a familiar figure in a snow-white robe. Rongxiu. Wei Zhe was angry and anxious. When did these people come in? Why didn't he notice them at all? The rest of the people present also reacted quickly. They kept looking at Rongxiu and Chu Luiyue. Most of them had seen Rongxiu before. Hence, most of their attention was placed on Chu Luiyue at this point. Shangguanyu. The one who defeated Yi Wentao in the Battle of Peach Blossom Dock. Someone murmured in disbelief. She looks like a high deity. Although she's a high deity, she helped Shangguanjing block the flames that gushed out of the bronze door knocker. That's right. She has contracted with the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. These things are naturally of no threat to her, they were around just now. How did he get in? Everyone was talking about it. The appearance of Chu Luiyue and Rongxiu was like a stone thrown into the water, causing countless ripples. However, at this moment, Chu Luiyue did not pay attention to these movements. She furrowed her brows and stared at the bronze doorknob. She then reached out her hand without hesitation. You, danger. Sheng Wanjing was about to stop him when Chu Luiyue shook his head gently. Taizu, don't worry. I know what to do. Hearing her words, Sheng Wanjing froze in midair. He knew that she never did meaningless things. Since she came here, it meant that she must have her own purpose. Sheng Wanjing recalled that quite a few people had died here one after another and felt uneasy. However, the red fire was indeed suppressed by Chu Luiyue. Sheng Wanjing was very conflicted, but in the end, he chose to believe her. He did not say anything else and just silently mobilized all the force in his body. If he found something wrong, he would immediately take action. The onlookers all looked over at this moment. When they saw Chu Luiyue's actions, many people looked at each other with a hint of mockery in their eyes. So many people failed just now. Did she think that she was different from others? Wei Zhe curled the corners of his mouth without a smile and said, Sheng Wanyu, that bronze door knocker is extremely dangerous. Many people have already died here. You're taking such a risk. If something happens later, don't blame me for not warning you. Chu Luiyue did not stop moving as if she did not hear him at all. Ignoring him in public was undoubtedly not giving Wei Zhe face. Wei Zhe's face was faintly green. Go, I will protect my princess. Rong Xiao spoke casually and interrupted Wei Zhe. His expression was languid and calm, but his tone was indisputable. Besides, Yu is now the master of Peach Blossom Dock. Speaking of which, she is on an equal footing with the Master of Family Wei. Master of Family Wei, it's better to respectfully call her Master Yu, okay? Wei Zhe was so angry that the veins on his forehead throbbed. The Yu residence of Peach Blossom Dock has just been established, but my family Wei has been passed down for thousands of years. It is a first-class family in the world of God. How can they be compared? In other words, Chu Luiyue was not qualified to be compared with him at all. Rong Xiao smiled and gently stroked the tip of his eyebrows with his slender white fingers. Then, I would like to ask, if the Master of Family Wei is so powerful, who is stronger than Yi Wentao? Wei Zhe choked and the rest of his words were suddenly stuck in his throat. He could not say anything. What kind of existence was the family Yi? What kind of person was Yi Wentao? Ordinary people might not know, but people from first-class families like them knew best. Wei Zhe knew that if he were to fight with Yi Wentao, he would be the one to suffer a crushing defeat in the end. But Yi Wentao had lost in Peach Blossom Dock. His lips moved and his eyes unconsciously looked at the slender and exquisite figure not far away. Everyone in the area instantly quietened down. They had almost forgotten that the reason why the woman in front of them could become the master of Peach Blossom Dock was because she had defeated Yi Wentao. If even Yi Wentao was no match for her, then they, at this moment, Chu Luiyue's hand was less than an inch away from the bronze doorknob. Wei Zhe's heart felt like it was being squeezed tightly by something. Let them be arrogant for now. Later, when something happens, they will. As soon as this thought came to his mind, Wei Zhe widened his eyes in shock. Because Chu Luiyue had grabbed the bronze doorknob safely. Her slender fingers held the doorknob tightly. The glow from the doorknob made her skin look like jade. Everyone unconsciously held their breaths and looked at this scene in disbelief. Chu Luiyue's eyes were fixed in front of her. When she touched it, she could even clearly feel the patterns on it. She clearly did not recognize these runes, but, for some reason, she felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity at this moment. This feeling had actually started just now, and now it was even stronger and clearer. She pursed her lips. Standing here, she could hear the movements coming from inside more clearly. She was a little uncertain before, but now she could confirm that all the movements behind her were related to the 3 divine artifacts in her body. Tang Ke's Thousand Peaks halberd could not open it, but the divine artifacts left behind by Mr. Su could sense it strongly. Chu Luiyue no longer hesitated and gently pulled on the bronze doorknob. Knock, knock. The next moment, white light enveloped them. The stone in front of them suddenly cracked and gradually revealed the appearance of a door. Chu Luiyue pulled again. Creak, the door slowly opened. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2052. Looking at the door that was slowly opening, everyone was shocked on the spot. It's open. In the deathly silent crowd, someone mumbled in disbelief. Wei Zhe closed his eyes tightly, afraid that he had seen something wrong. However, the scene in front of him didn't disappear. The door was still opening bit by bit. A white light shrouded it, and no one could see what was behind the door. But it was indeed open. The door that was still motionless when so many people had died just now opened smoothly with a gentle knock from Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue immediately raised her leg and took a step forward. The next moment, her figure disappeared into the door. Rong Xiu's pace seemed neither fast nor slow, but in fact, his speed was extremely fast. As soon as he raised his hand, the halberd of 10,000 peaks, which was originally floating quietly in the air, flew over quickly. Then, he came to Shangwan Jing's side. Senior Shangwan, we should follow them. Rong Xiu chuckled. Shangwan Jing suddenly came back to his senses. Yes. You had already gone in. He took a deep breath and walked forward. Rong Xiu followed behind the two of them. Yan Qing and Chang Wanzhou followed them like shadows. Just now, everyone's attention was on Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu, and the two of them had always been good at hiding their figures and breaths, so they were like two transparent people from the beginning to the end. Until now, when they followed closely into the door, everyone was shocked to realize that the two of them didn't seem to be simple. When their figures disappeared one after another, the onlookers outside were still in deep shock. Wei Zhe was the first to react. The halberd of 10,000 peaks. That thing was taken away by Rong Xiu just now. That was a divine weapon. It was a treasure that he had obtained with great difficulty. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and chase after them. Wei Zhe shouted angrily and immediately rushed forward. In the blink of an eye, his figure also disappeared behind the door. Hearing this, the family Wei people woke up one after another. Seeing that Wei Zhe had already left, they couldn't care about anything else and hurriedly followed him. At this moment, the rest of the people present finally realized what was going on, and they all rushed towards the door in a rush. How could they not seize the opportunity to open Tang Ke's tomb after much difficulty? Whether they could get the inheritance and make further progress depended on today. Soon, everyone present rushed in. The stone forest regained its silence again. Only the scattered corpses and the messy bloodstains on the ground proved that everything that had happened here was real. After an unknown period of time, those corpses suddenly began to rot quickly. After about 15 minutes, only a set of corpses. The corpses, the corpses, the corpses, the corpses, and the corpses, the corpses, the corpses. Even the bloodstains on the ground seemed to have been swallowed up by something and quickly disappeared. There was only a faint smell of blood left in the air. It was as if nothing had happened. The dazzling white light quickly dissipated, and the scene in front of him gradually became clear. This was a passageway that led downwards. The passageway was narrow and could only accommodate two people walking side by side. Pearls the size of a fist were hung on the walls on both sides of the room at regular intervals. The faint glow shone down as if it was daytime and everything was panoramic. At this moment, Chu Luiyue was standing at the front, her feet stepping on the first step. She looked down with the help of the light, but she couldn't see the end. It seemed to extend all the way down to the ground. Chu Luiyue raised her vigilance to the highest level and held the red cloud sword in her hand before going down. Shangwan Jing followed behind her. When he saw everything around him clearly, even he couldn't help but gasp in shock. The walls are carved from lapis lazuli jade. The so-called lapis lazuli jade was an extremely precious jade. Its texture was extremely hard and it was an excellent material for refining divine weapons. The success rate of refining with lapis lazuli jade was often much higher. Therefore, this lapis lazuli was highly valued and liked by weapon refiners. It was just that this thing was naturally produced and its quantity was limited, so it was very rare. This also made lapis lazuli jade even more difficult to find. Chu Luiyue could of course see that it was lapis lazuli jade. Among the venerable divine weapons that Taizu gave her, there was a short sword that was refined from this thing. Even a top-notch weapon refining venerable like the great ancestor only had such a small piece. But at this moment, the walls on both sides were made of lapis lazuli jade. It was no wonder that Taizu was so shocked. It seems that this is really Tang Ke's tomb. Other than him, who else in the world can do such a thing? Taizu let out a long sigh and then looked at the figure in front of him with a complicated and emotional gaze. So many people had tried before, but they had all failed. But this girl came and opened the door directly. Such a thing could only be explained by the word opportunity. Although he knew that this girl had always been lucky, he was still shocked by these things that happened to her every time. This kind of luck was truly something that others could only be envious and jealous of. Familiar footsteps came from behind. It was Rong Xiao and the others. As Sheng Wanjing walked, he couldn't help but ask, why are you here? When he said that he was coming here, she didn't seem to have any intention of coming. If he knew that they were coming, he would have brought them along. Chu Luiyue said softly, I didn't plan to come at first, but later I found out about some things, so I decided to come and take a look. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2053. What? Sheng Wanjing was confused. Even Tang Ke's name couldn't move her. What else could it be that could make her come here? Chu Luiyue was silent for a moment and suddenly laughed. I wanted to see what exactly happened between Mr. Su and Senior Tang Ke back then. Sheng Wanjing was stunned for a moment, and then he suddenly remembered that Chu Luiyue already had several holy weapons. And those were all Mr. Su's. Could it be that the movement just now? He suddenly had a guess in his heart. Previously, Wei Zhe and he had tried to open this door with the halberd of 10,000 peaks, but it was in vain. Because the movement behind the door was not caused by the halberd of 10,000 peaks. Yu said so. Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. But in Sheng Wanjing's view, this reaction was a tacit admission. He opened his eyes slightly, and for a moment, he was a little confused. How could this be? Could it be that this was not Tang Ke's tomb, but Mr. Su's? But the family Wei had always said that this was Tang Ke's tomb. If they hadn't gotten any evidence, they definitely wouldn't have been so sure. But now, Sheng Wanjing frowned and didn't say anything. He just followed Chu Luiyue and kept walking down. What the truth was, perhaps they would know soon. Crack. A subtle sound suddenly came from behind. It seemed that something had broken, but it didn't seem like it. At the same time, there seemed to be a wave of power surging over. However, before it spread out, it had been suppressed. Sensing the movement, Chu Luiyue and Sheng Wanjing looked back at the same time. What? What happened just now? Sheng Wanjing asked curiously. He was very close, so he could clearly sense that the fluctuation came from Rong Xiu's body. Rong Xiu's thin lips curved up, and he smiled. Nothing, it's just that the halberd of 10,000 peaks has just recognized its master. Sheng Wanjing was shocked and lost his voice. What? Chu Luiyue was also a little surprised. Just now. Rong Xiu nodded and picked up the Myriad Peaks halberd. Even though the surroundings were bright and resplendent, one could still clearly see the streams of light above. They were extremely beautiful and extremely sharp. Originally, the process of a sacred artifact recognizing a master is somewhat troublesome. However, the 10,000 Peaks halberd had already devoured a lot of Tianlei's power and was only one step away from completely awakening it. Therefore, he saved a lot of time and energy. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly. In that case, I really have to thank Family Wei properly. Rong Xiao also laughed. Of course. Shengguan Jing stood between the two of them and listened to them chatting casually while taking the long halberd of 10,000 Peaks, one of the 10 great divine weapons. He was speechless for a while. Only in his mind, a voice was crazily shouting, "A saint artifact." That was a saint artifact. It recognized him as its master just like that. Most importantly, it's such a big matter. Can't you two give a little more reaction? What do you want me to do like this? Chu Luiyue looked at Shengguan Jing. Seeing that his expression was a little strange, he asked with concern, "Taizu, what's wrong with you?" Shengguan Jing took a deep breath. I'm fine, look at how nonchalant the children were. He couldn't embarrass himself too much. Rong Xiao asked, "Perhaps Taizu also yearns for the sacred artifact?" Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. I see. How about this? If we find other sacred artifacts in the future, we'll keep them for you, Taizu. Shengguan Jing slipped and hurriedly reached out to support himself against the wall beside him, barely managing to stand firm. Ahem. No need. Such treasures depend on one's luck. If one doesn't have that luck, it's useless even if they keep holding it in their hands. You don't have to worry about me. Wasn't Wei Zhe like this before? Although he had obtained the 10,000 Peaks halberd, it still hadn't recognized him as its master after such a long time. On the other hand, Rong Xiao had just casually held the 10,000 Peaks halberd in his hand and directly became its new master. It was useless no matter how envious, jealous, or hateful others were. They didn't deliberately lower their voices, so Wei Zhe, who followed them in, quickly heard these words. When Wei Zhe learned that the 10,000 Peaks halberd had recognized Rong Xiao as its master, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. It wasn't easy for him to obtain it. The entire family Wei had only possessed this sacred artifact for thousands of years. However, as soon as he took it out, it became someone else's in the blink of an eye. Rong Xiao. Aren't you going overboard by doing this? Wei Zhe finally couldn't hold it in and questioned sternly. Previously, I was very polite to you out of respect for your identity as the Holy Sun. Is this what you did? The distance between the two of them wasn't far. Moreover, the tunnel was bright, so they could see each other. Rong Xiao chuckled. Family Wei is the Lord. Sacred artifacts have spirits, so they choose their own masters. It had been in your hands for so long, but you couldn't become its master. This only proves that there's no fate between the two of you. Now that the 10,000 Peaks halberd has chosen I as its master, how can I reject it? You. Wei Zhe was exasperated. However, Rong Xiao's words were reasonable, and he couldn't refute them at all. If he had to blame someone, he could only blame himself for not having such luck. Wei Zhe couldn't help but feel regret. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have taken it out. Now, Tang Ke's tomb had been opened by Chu Luiyue, and the 10,000 Peaks halberd had become Rong Xiao's. This was a huge loss. Chu Luiyue raised his voice slightly. Lord of Family Wei, since we're already here, you should save your energy. Who knows what dangers we'll face down there? After all, you're the Lord of Family Wei. It won't be good if you die here. Wei Zhe was furious. His face was ashen. These two people really knew how to infuriate people better than the other. A few family way members behind him tried to persuade him in a low voice. "Lord, we don't know what's going on down there. Why don't we wait and see?" That's right. After all, it was Shengguan Yu who opened the door. No matter what, we have to know what's going on down there. What do you think? If he fell out with the other party here, then who knew what would happen? When Wei Zhe heard this, he knew that they had a point. He could only suppress his anger for the time being. I'll get my revenge sooner or later. Silence returned to the passageway. Only the sound of everyone's breathing and footsteps could be heard. Although the surroundings were still bright and resplendent, the atmosphere became more and more tense as they went down, perhaps out of fear and worry for the unknown. The people behind them gradually caught up with them. Chu Luyue didn't need to turn around to know that the people outside had all entered the passageway. Now, it would be even more difficult for them to fight for anything. After some time, they finally reached the last step of the passageway. She looked forward and was suddenly stunned. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2054. Not far ahead, there was an entrance. The entrance was in the shape of an arch and led straight inside. It was pitch black inside. No one knew what was on the other side and what kind of scenery it was. There was a biting cold wind surging out from inside. The strands of hair on Chu Liyue's forehead fluttered gently and landed on her face, making it itchy. She casually tucked it behind her ear and walked forward. Wait. Shengguan Jing hurriedly pulled her back. This place is very strange. It's better to be careful. Chu Liyue chuckled and patted his arm. Don't worry. Since I can open this door, I'm not afraid of danger. Besides, aren't you and Rong Xiu here? Only then did Shengguan Jing relax a little. Actually, thinking about it carefully, Yu Er's current combat strength should not be much worse than his. If she summoned Dumpling and Zi Qin, she would definitely win. She must have the strength to deal with Yi Wentao. Actually, if he came alone, he wouldn't have these worries. The main reason was that he couldn't let go of Chu Liyue. Even though he knew that she was powerful now, his heart couldn't help but beat faster at the thought of her facing danger. Meeting Chu Liyue's calm gaze, Shengguan Jing finally let go of her. Chu Liyue stepped forward and approached step by step. The surrounding lights were bright, but not a single ray of light could flow into the thick darkness. There seemed to be an invisible barrier at the arch-like entrance, completely dividing this space into two parts. Chu Liyue walked to the front and stood still. Buzz. Standing here, the faintly discernible buzzing sound became clearer and clearer. Clearly, all of the commotion was coming from inside. Footsteps kept coming from behind. Obviously, more and more people were walking down. Everyone's gaze was focused on Chu Liyue. Dead silence. Chu Liyue's eyes were filled with determination. After gently exhaling, she clenched Scarlet Heaven's sword in her hand and took a step forward. Soon, half of her body merged into the darkness. Everyone held their breaths and didn't even blink, afraid that they would miss something. Tap. The sound of feet hitting the ground could be heard. Chu Liyue's figure finally disappeared before everyone's eyes. A thick darkness shrouded everything in front of her eyes. She knew that she had passed through the entrance and completely entered this strange black space. But, the surroundings were still quiet. Chu Liyue could even hear his own heartbeat and breathing. She looked left and right. What entered his eyes was a thick black that could not be dissolved. A gust of wind blew over, bringing with it a slight chill. The buzzing sound seemed to be coming from all directions. Chu Liyue listened carefully for a while, but still couldn't tell where it came from. She raised her sword, intending to summon a flame for illumination. However, the moment the reddish-gold flame appeared, it was quickly extinguished. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment. It seemed that there was some kind of force suppressing the surroundings. A faint layer of pressure seemed to be gradually enveloping her. "Ah, I want to come out." Dumpling's soft voice sounded, with a hint of curiosity and anticipation. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. "Now?" "Yes." Although Dumpling was lively and active, she had always been very sensible. At critical moments, she always knew what she should and shouldn't do. It was rare for her to take the initiative to speak like this. Chu Luiyue only thought for a moment before agreeing. "Okay. But you can't run around. You must follow me well here, understand?" Dumpling hurriedly agreed. Yes. Dumpling listens to you the most. Only then did Chu Luiyue feel relieved. With a thought, Dumpling's figure immediately appeared beside her. A layer of reddish-gold flame burned on her body, but it seemed to be suppressed by some kind of power. The flame was slightly weak. Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed slightly. Dumpling had opened her fifth meridian and was very strong. Adding to the fact that she had a pure bloodline, her pressure could not be underestimated. Even Yi Wentao had not been able to gain an advantage against her. Yet here, Dumpling's presence was still at a disadvantage. "I wonder what is in this darkness." At this time, a strange ripple came from her body. She stilled slightly. This ripple came from the armillary shield. Just as this thought flashed through her mind, a bright light suddenly poured down from above her head. Where the light reached, the thick darkness in the surroundings suddenly retreated. It was as if the dust accumulated over the years was suddenly wiped away, and everything gradually revealed its original appearance. All the scenes slowly appeared in front of Chu Luiyue. This was an extremely wide circular space. The tall walls were a dense and dark black, very similar to the armillary shield. And on the circular wall, there were incomparably thick bronze doors. There was only a beam of light falling from the dome above her head, and it was unclear. Chu Luiyue was standing at the entrance of this huge space. With her as the center, there were 5 doors on each side. In total, there were 10 doors. The vast pressure was coming from these bronze doors. She stared blankly at the scene in front of her. She had never thought that it would be like this inside. Was this really Tangku's tomb? However, from the looks of it, it really didn't look like a tomb, and the 10 doors were all smooth and flat. There were no patterns carved on them. They were completely the same. Other than that, there was nothing else here. It was even too empty. The people outside also noticed the changes inside. Rong Xiao and the others walked in one after another. Shangguan Jing looked around and was also stunned. To think that he had been worried for a long time. Now, it seemed that it was very different from what he had expected. He waited patiently for a while and did not discover any danger. Do you see anything?" Chu Luiyue stared at the 10 bronze doors thoughtfully. Not yet. She vaguely felt that these doors were a little different, but nothing had happened yet, so it was not easy to guess. Shangguan Jing followed her gaze and frowned. Why are there so many doors here? At this moment, Wei Zhe and the others saw that Chu Luiyue and the others were fine and walked in one after another. Hearing Shangguan Jing's words, everyone fell into deep thought. Suddenly, Wei Zhe's eyes lit up. 10 doors. Didn't Tang Ku refine 10 sacred artifacts in the battle with Mr. Su back then? Perhaps it corresponds to these 10 doors. These words immediately gained the approval of many people. It was not unreasonable to guess like that. Otherwise, who would leave 10 bronze doors here? I want to go over. Dumpling tugged at Chu Luiyue's hand and whispered. Chu Luiyue looked in the direction she was pointing. You want to go to the middle? Dumpling nodded vigorously. Yes. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment. Okay, I'll go with you. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2055. She held Scarlet Heaven's sword tightly in one hand and Dumpling in the other as she walked towards the center. Rong Xiao looked up slightly and stared at her. His gaze was deep and there seemed to be waves in his eyes, but they disappeared in an instant. The closer they got to the center, the clearer Chu Luiyue realized that the pressure on her body became. However, she did not sense any dangerous killing intent from it. The space was very big, and Chu Luiyue walked very cautiously, so it took them a while to finally reach the center. When they got closer, Chu Luiyue realized that there seemed to be some kind of pattern engraved in the center of the ground. However, probably because it was too old, it was already blurred and difficult to distinguish. Dumpling's eyes lit up and she was about to step on it happily. Chu Luiyue pulled her back. Dumpling, do you know what that is? Dumpling blinked and shook her head. I don't know. Chu Luiyue. I don't know why you want to go so badly. Yes. Dumpling tilted her head and thought for a while. I don't know what's going on either, but I really want to go. Chu Luiyue looked at her, her thoughts surging. What is it that can make Dumpling have such a reaction? You, don't worry. I can feel that it's not dangerous up there. Just let me go. Dumpling hugged Chu Luiyue's thigh and began to act coquettishly. Chu Luiyue touched her hair bun, feeling amused and helpless. Okay, just go. Dumpling's intuition had always been very accurate. Since she said so, then, there should be no problem. I knew it, you is the best. Dumpling's eyes curved in joy and she rubbed against her leg. Chu Luiyue grabbed her little hand and paused for a moment before finally taking a step forward. When her feet landed on the vein pattern, the faint buzzing sound from before exploded in her ears like a sudden clap of thunder. Whang! A ray of resplendent light suddenly erupted from beneath her feet. Chu Luiyue subconsciously raised his hand to cover his eyes. Boom! Boom! Something was gushing out of it. The sharp and biting cold aura was like the edge of a blade as it swiftly flew past her body, sticking close to her body and narrowly escaping. It took a while before it gradually calmed down. Chu Luiyue could faintly feel that there were streaks of light flickering around him. She was slightly stunned. She put down her hand and looked around. When she saw the scene in front of her, even she couldn't help but widen her eyes in shock as she stood there in a daze. As for the others present, they were all stunned. Looking at everything before them, they were speechless. In the vast space, streaks of light were densely packed and intertwined with each other. What entered his eyes was like a dazzling river of stars, causing him to be dazzled. And these, all of them were Tianlei. Countless dazzling silver bolts of heavenly lightning filled the entire space. They flowed slowly like water, yet they were brilliant, holy, and powerful. At this moment, time seemed to have stopped flowing. Everything seemed insignificant in the face of this vast and shocking power. Chu Luiyue stared blankly. These were all gushing out from beneath her feet just now. Dumpling screamed excitedly. Aw! That's great! I knew it! I knew it! She let go of Chu Luiyue's hand and started running as if she was running, passing through the countless bolts of lightning. She was like a fish swimming freely in the water, but also like a ball of fire burning freely with the wind. Her crisp and cute voice was especially clear in this quiet space. Wherever she passed, streaks of Tianlei energy rushed into her body like silver snakes. And the aura on her body began to rise at an alarming speed. Chu Luiyue looked at this scene and finally understood. No wonder Dumpling was so eager and enthusiastic. It turned out that she had long sensed that there were countless Tianlei buried under the ground. Previously, in the Thousand Wine Mountain, she was the same. She soaked in the spring water that accumulated countless Tianlei energy for an entire month. It was also that time that Dumpling successfully broke through the shackles and became a crimson gold sky phoenix. This scene was so familiar, but it was not exactly the same. Because, the Tianlei accumulated in the Thousand Wine Mountain spring was just a drop in the ocean compared to this place. There was no comparison between the two. Who knew how many years it would take to gather such a shocking amount of Tianlei? Chu Luiyue suddenly thought of something and looked down. The ground under her feet had returned to normal. The patterns on it had also dissipated. She instantly understood something. That was a seal. At this moment, everyone finally came back to their senses. Why? Why are there so many Tianlei here? Perhaps they were all left behind by Senior Tangku. It's possible. After all, he was the top craftsman back then. His ability to trigger Tianlei is extremely strong. Wouldn't it be easy to refine a divine artifact here? Or perhaps, Senior Tangku's inheritance is here. All kinds of voices came one after another. Many people's expressions had changed from the initial shock and confusion to excitement and anticipation. There were even many people who were ready to make a move. Wei Zhe could not help but reach out his hand and reach toward the Tianlei closest to him. Chi! A scorching pain came from the center of his palm. Wei Zhe cried out in pain and quickly retracted his hand, but there were still shocking wounds on his hand. He was shocked and angry at the same time, and a deep sense of fear appeared in his heart. When he looked at the Tianlei again, his expression was very different from before. The surrounding people also looked over. Sheng Wanjing sneered. These are Tianlei that contain extremely strong power. Even the exalted gods would find it difficult to deal with them. Family Wei, do you really think you're an ancient divine beast and can withstand the power of these Tianlei with just your body alone? The crowd roared with laughter. Wei Zhe's face turned red and white, but he had nothing to say. This time, he was too careless. When he saw Dumpling running happily over there, he could not help but reach out his hand. These Tianlei filled the entire space and moved slowly, automatically avoiding the crowd. However, if someone touched them, they would not avoid them. Wei Zhe only saw Dumpling's aura rising continuously, but he forgot that she was a crimson gold celestial phoenix. Ordinary people could not be compared to her. He gritted his teeth and said, I can't do it. If I can't do it, how many of you here can do it? These Tianlei's power is amazing, but we can only watch. As soon as he said that, the smiles on many people's faces faded. That's right. If they could only watch and not use it, wouldn't it be a wasted trip? At this moment, a deep, magnetic, and somewhat weathered man's voice was heard. These Tianlei are indeed for you to use. Chu Luiyue suddenly looked up. The voice came from behind the bronze door. However, it was difficult to tell which door it came from. Chu Luiyue said loudly. This humble one is Sheng Wanyu. May I know your name, senior? The voice laughed. You trespassed on my territory, and now you're asking who I am. Chu Luiyue's pupils shrank. Tangku. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2056. In this world, there were only a handful of people who could call themselves a saint. And Tangku, who had once refined 5 sacred artifacts, was one of them. Therefore, even if he had not seen the other party's appearance, Chu Luiyue immediately guessed his identity. You are Senior Tangku? Chu Luiyue asked tentatively. Even though he was 70 to 80% sure in his heart, he still had to ask this question. The moment the 2 words, Tangku, came out, everyone immediately stopped talking. They all pricked up their ears and listened attentively. This question was exactly what they wanted to ask. What answered Chu Luiyue was a meaningful laugh. I didn't expect that after 10,000 years, there would still be people who remember this saint's name. It was indeed him. Chu Luiyue reacted extremely quickly, immediately cupping his fists and bowing respectfully. Junior has long heard of Senior's great reputation. It is Junior's fortune to have met you today. These words were true. As one of the only two powerful existences in the entire divine ruins who had ever refined a sacred artifact, Tang Ke was like an insurmountable mountain. His name was deeply engraved in the hearts of every weapon refiner. Most people would never have the chance to see a sacred artifact in their entire lives. Not to mention seeing Tang Ke. Now, the real Tang Ke had actually appeared here. How could they not be excited? Even if it was just a voice, to the weapon refiners present, they would have no regrets. After a short silence, Wei Zhe and the others also reacted and bowed. Greetings, Senior Tang Ke. Many people were so excited that their faces flushed red, and even their bodies began to tremble. If it wasn't for the fact that they couldn't tell where the voice came from, they would have already knelt down. Tang Ke, however, laughed and teased, "Don't worry. This saint is only half a remnant soul now. How did you all see it?" Everyone was speechless for a moment and looked at each other. They did not expect Tang Ke to say such words. Chu Luiyue was also somewhat surprised. She had originally thought that an existence like Tang Ke should be high and mighty, sacred and dignified. But now, she felt that it was very different from what she had expected. "Girl, come over here." Tang Ke's voice came from all directions. No one knew which direction she was referring to when she said, "Go forward." However, they could all tell that this lass was for Chu Luiyue. In an instant, all eyes were on Chu Luiyue. Everyone had different expressions. Surprise, suspicion, uneasiness, envy. Who didn't want to win Tang Ke's favor? If Tang Ke was happy, he might even pass on everything he had learned in his lifetime. Chu Luiyue turned a blind eye to these gazes. She knew what Tang Ke meant. "Yes." She responded and stepped forward without hesitation. His feet landed right on the spot where the seal had been. At this moment, Chu Luiyue clearly felt a gaze that seemed to have materialized on his body. Her heart tightened. It was Tang Ke's eyes. But fortunately, this gaze wasn't aggressive. Chu Luiyue's expression was calm as she stood there calmly, allowing the other party to size her up. This was their territory. If the other party really wanted to do something, they wouldn't have waited until now. "You're not old, but you've got guts." Tang Ke suddenly snorted. His voice was dignified without being angry. "Do you know what kind of sin it is to disturb this saint?" As his voice fell, in the vast space, countless Tianlei suddenly changed directions and rushed toward Chu Luiyue. It was as if in the next moment, if she said one wrong word, these terrifying Tianlei would all strike down without hesitation. The atmosphere was tense, on the verge of breaking out. Peach Blossom Dock, Yu Mansion. In the courtyard, little Hachi was sitting at a stone table under the shade of a tree. In front of her was a basket of peach blossom petals that she had just picked. The sun shone down, and the shadows of the trees were mottled. A gentle breeze blew, and the branches and leaves swayed. The spots of light were like twinkling stars. It accentuated her jade-like skin, beautiful and enchanting. She picked up a petal from the basket and looked at it carefully. Then, she shook her head and revealed a look of slight disdain. Her delicate fingers, which were painted with nail polish, moved slightly, and the petal fell to the ground with the wind. There was already a large patch of pinkish-white petals at her feet. Then, she picked up another petal. Sister 8. 13 walked in from outside. His forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat, and he was panting slightly. Little Hachi raised her eyelids and glanced at him, which was rare. "Just ran back." Yes. Big brother gave you extra training again. 13 nodded and pursed his lips into a smile. As expected, nothing can escape Sister 8's eyes. Little Hatchie smiled, and there was a hint of pride in her eyes. Of course. Although it was not difficult for anyone to guess what had happened when they saw 13's current appearance, little Hatchie had never rejected such compliments. Sister 8, why did you pick these petals? 13 asked curiously. Recently, Sister 8 seemed to be particularly relaxed. Little Hatchie picked up a petal. Naturally, it's for bathing and smelling. It just snowed a few days ago, and the fragrance of these petals is at its strongest. Of course, we have to hurry. Otherwise, when the snow melts, the smell will be much fainter. The peach blossoms in Peach Blossom Cove were different from those in other places. She had only discovered this recently, so she was happily fiddling with these things. Those that don't look good, those that haven't bloomed properly, or those that have bloomed too much, can't be used. 13 was confused. This has a big impact. Anyway, they're all used for smelling. The shape and so on, it seems, there's no difference. Little Hatchie shook her head mysteriously. You're still young, so you don't understand. This thing will affect Sister 8's mood, so it's very important. She had always spared no effort in this kind of thing and wanted to do her best. 13 nodded as if he understood. Anyway, Sister 8's words always seemed to make sense. 13. At this moment, a familiar voice came from outside the courtyard. Little Hatchie and 13 looked towards the source of the voice. Dean Nan. The two were surprised. During this period, Nan Su Huai had been staying in Peach Blossom Cove, but he spent most of his time outside and rarely appeared in the U residence. So when they saw him, Little Hatchie and 13 were very surprised. Nan Su Huai walked over. Little Hatchie stood up and bowed together with 13. Nan Su Huai laughed. This old man just happened to pass by here. You don't have to worry about it, just do what you need to do. As he said that, he looked at 13 again and said with some emotion and surprise. 13, it's only been such a short time and you broke through again. 13 was now a stage 8 warrior. He smiled shyly. The cultivation environment here is good, so my cultivation is naturally faster. It's all thanks to Master and Big Brother. By the way, are you here today to look for Master? She's not here today. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2057. Nan Su Huai waved his hand with a smile. I know she's not here. I'm not here to look for her. 13 paused for a second before he reacted. Not many people knew that his master and his highness had left. But Nan Su Huai was his master's master, so it wasn't strange that he knew about it. Then why are you here today? Nan Su Huai stroked his beard and smiled. Nothing. I've finished my business here. I'm going to rest today so I can return to the academy tomorrow. His only purpose was to help Chu Luiyue gain a foothold in Peach Blossom Dock. Now that he had achieved his goal, he should return to the academy. After all, he had been away for a long time. 13 came to a realization and nodded. Then, he asked hesitantly, I see. Then, are you not waiting for my master and his highness to come back? Nan Su Huai was about to leave, but when he heard 13's question, he found it interesting. He glanced at 13. 13, are you worried about them? No. 13 immediately shook his head and looked at Nan Su Huai's eyes that seemed to have seen through him. I heard that the Chingu Slope is Family Wei's territory. If my master and his highness go there alone, what if, bang? Before he could finish, Little Hatchie walked up and slapped the back of 13's head. Bah! What nonsense are you talking about? My master and his highness are blessed by the heavens. Why would they be in danger? She put her hands together and prayed sincerely. Children's words carry no harm. 13 touched his head. Sister 8, I'm not a child anymore. He was a head taller than Sister 8. Little Hachi glanced at him. 13 immediately shut his mouth obediently. It seemed like Brother 10's teachings were right. Almost no one in the 13U could compete with Sister 8. But the best way to save his life was, Sister 8 was always right. Nan Su Hui stroked his beard and smiled. Little 8, 13, you don't have to worry. Nothing will happen to them this time. After all, they were going to Tangku's tomb. With his high, Rongxiu and Senior Shengguan, what problem could not be solved? Judging from his tone, he seemed to be very assured about this matter. Little Hachi was instantly interested. She leaned forward and asked, why is Dean Nan so sure? Although Shengguan Jing and the others were powerful, Tangku was even more famous. Who knew what kind of traps and dangers were hidden in Tangku's tomb? Nan Su Hui coughed and said this. Think about it. There's no need to talk about Senior Shengguan. Even Rongxiu and you have extremely high talent in refining weapons. If even they can't handle it, then there's no need to talk about the others, right? Hearing Nan Su Hui praise her master, little Hachi was satisfied. That's true. Since even you have said so, then we are even more at ease. Nan Su Hui laughed and looked at the two of them with emotion. Previously, he didn't know much about the 13UU, but this time, Chu Luiyue took down the Peach Blossom Dock. It could be said that the 13UU had made a great contribution. Little Hachi in front of him was usually very delicate. She was very particular about her makeup and clothes. Just standing there, she was enchanting and could be said to be a stunner. However, when it came to doing things, she was not careless. Previously, in order to repair the medicinal herbs in the Peach Blossom Dock, she had been working with Shifang and put in a lot of effort. From then on, Nan Su Hui knew that he had underestimated the ability of the 13UU. The people chosen by Yu seemed to have different personalities, but in fact, all of them were extremely outstanding. It was no wonder that 13 was unwilling to go to Lingxiao College to cultivate. Perhaps he would be able to learn even more by following these people. He wondered where Yu had chosen these people from back then. Nan Su Hui sighed in his heart. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, he left. After he left, little Hachi's body softened. She sat down again and focused on choosing the petals. 13. Xin Yi's voice suddenly sounded from outside. 13 hurriedly turned around. Big brother. Xin Yi raised his chin. Continue. Yes. 13 was already used to Xin Yi's training and hurriedly ran over. When he came to Xin Yi's side and saw that calm and indifferent face, 13 hesitated for a moment. Big brother, you don't seem to be worried about Master and the others. Xin Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. Is what Dean Nan said not enough? 13 was stunned. Based on Big Brother's words. Does he really think that Master will be safe and sound with Grand Ancestor and His Highness Saint around? Big Brother, you seem to. His Highness Saint is very, think highly of him. Admire him. Respect him. 13 was speechless for a moment and didn't know what to say. Big Brother was indifferent and arrogant. There were very few people who could enter his eyes. But it seemed that from the start, his attitude towards His Highness was very polite. Xin Yi glanced at him indifferently. It won't be too late to ask these questions when you become a high god. Clear ancient slope, messy stone forest. Tang Ku's questioning voice reverberated throughout the entire space, bringing with it a heavy pressure as it fell down heavily. Chu Liuyue's shoulder seemed to be pressed by something, and the blood in her body rushed quickly. Everyone also subconsciously held their breaths. Was Tang Ku going to hold Chu Luiyue accountable? Amidst the silence, Chu Luiyue raised her chin, curved her lips, and said word by word, "Senior, weren't you the one who let me in?" Dead silence. Many people looked at each other in surprise. What did Chu Luiyue mean by that? Tang Ku let her in. How was that possible? Wei Zhe couldn't help but sneer. This Chu Luiyue really thought of herself as someone important. Who did she think she was to make someone like Tang Ku do this for her? She was really bold. Tang Ku wouldn't let her off easily for saying such things. However, just as everyone thought that Chu Luiyue was going to be punished for this, they suddenly heard a hearty laugh. Ha 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 ha. Girl, you're really smart. Tang Ku's voice was filled with undisguised joy and admiration. The atmosphere instantly changed, and the hostility from before dissipated instantly. Tang Ku's smile immediately stunned everyone present. What did that mean? Could it be that Tang Ku really took the initiative to let Chu Luiyue in? But didn't he stay here and never go out? Then how did he get in touch with Chu Luiyue? Hearing Tang Ku's voice, Chu Luiyue's eyes curved slightly, but she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She had made the right bet. The reason why she was the only one who could open the door outside was because it was Tang Ku's idea. And the reason why he chose her out of so many people. Chu Luiyue's hand slowly tightened as a guess flashed through her mind. Perhaps it had something to do with the armillary shield in her body. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2058. That's right. You were able to open the door and enter this place because of my instructions. However, I originally thought that you would come in by yourself. I didn't expect you to bring so many people with you. Tang Ku's deep voice reverberated in the vast space. Everyone had different expressions when they heard this. Why did these words sound so uncomfortable? Could it be that Tang Ku had chosen Chu Luiyue alone from the beginning? And they were able to enter because of Chu Luiyue. This made the people who were waiting to see Chu Luiyue make a fool of themselves speechless and feel very upset. No one would be in a good mood after hearing such words. Sheng Wanjing was very happy. Anyway, Yu was promising, and he was proud. If Yu really inherited Tang Ku's mantle in the end, he would be happier and more excited than if he got these things. Rong Xiu stood at the side with his hands behind his back. Upon hearing this, he tilted his head slightly and glanced at Chu Luiyue. His originally cold eyes and eyebrows had a faint smile on them. Chu Luiyue's lips curled up slightly. I was stupid and didn't understand Senior's meaning. Although she said that, her expression was relaxed and there was no regret or annoyance on her face. Tang Ku seemed a little surprised. Don't you think it's a pity? What's a pity? It's a pity. You could have enjoyed such a great opportunity alone. Little girl, this sage will give you another chance. As long as you agree, I can send everyone out now and only leave you alone. And all my inheritance will be inherited by you at that time. When these words were said, everyone was shocked and in an uproar. Senior Tang Ku. Finally, someone in the crowd couldn't hold back and stepped forward to speak. Senior, please reconsider. Although we can't open that door, in terms of talent and strength, we are not inferior to Sheng Wanyu in the slightest. In fact, we are even better. If you really want to choose someone to inherit your mantle, it must be the most outstanding person in the world. Sheng Wanyu may not be qualified for this position. Yes. Sheng Wanyu's cultivation as a martial artist was truly outstanding. Even at the high deity realm, he could fight against a supreme god expert. But in terms of refining, she may not be the best choice for you. You must consider it carefully. Senior Tang Ku, all kinds of voices kept coming, all trying to dissuade Tang Ku from making this decision. From their point of view, if Tang Ku really chose Chu Luiyue, it was really unreasonable and a big mistake. Of all the people present, which one of them wasn't better at refining armaments than her? In terms of strength and experience, she was the one who had no competition at all. I really don't know what's wrong with Tang Ku. She actually made such a choice. Tang Ku asked. Girl, what do you think? Chu Luiyue snorted inwardly. This senior Tang Ku was really not easy to deal with. If he really wanted to pass the inheritance to her, he could have just let her in from the very beginning and shut the door on everyone else. Why do you have to do this now? Just now, he had already made it clear. If she chose to drive these people out now, everyone would point their fingers at her. For Tang Ku, this was a simple matter. After all, he was the master here. But for her, it would cause a lot of trouble. Although she wasn't afraid, she didn't want to take the blame for nothing. Therefore, she raised her eyes slightly and smiled. Senior Tang Ku, it's a great honor to be able to inherit your legacy. But since I'm the one who brought them in, there's no reason to drive them out now. So, you're saying that you want to keep them? Tang Ku asked. Do you know that if you do this, it means that you have to compete with them again? I don't need to remind you of the difficulties involved. You should understand it yourself, right? Chu Luiyue nodded. I understand. I'm willing to compete with everyone fairly. Only those who have the talent and opportunity will be able to inherit your legacy. This is the most suitable way, isn't it? As soon as Chu Luiyue finished speaking, the surroundings fell into a strange silence. The crowd, who were speaking passionately just now, quietened down. They looked at Chu Luiyue with different expressions. From their standpoint, it was normal for them to say those words. After all, the opportunity was right in front of them. They had to try and fight for it. But if they were Chu Luiyue, they wouldn't say those words like her. Tang Ku's legacy. Countless craftsmen in the world dreamed of it, but it was out of their reach. Now, as long as she opened her mouth, she could get it easily. But she had rejected him. She even said that she wanted to compete with them. Was there something wrong with her brain? Or did she think that she would definitely win? Master Yu of Peach Blossom Cove, you're indeed worthy of your reputation. You're magnanimous and upright. I'm really impressed by your breadth of mind. Wei Zhe cupped his fists and said with a chuckle. However, his tone was somewhat ambiguous. Master Yu, you're so confident that you can come out on top. Chu Luiyue glanced at him, and her eyes curved. Compared to the seniors here, I'm still inexperienced and not worth mentioning. Today, he was fortunate enough to be recognized by Senior Tang Ku and be able to compete with the other seniors. It was already a rare blessing. Her words were rather humble. As soon as she said that, many people's expressions softened. This Shangguan Yu didn't seem to be as arrogant and domineering as the rumors said. Moreover, her actions were equivalent to giving the others a chance. Everyone had a good impression of her. A fair competition based on everyone's ability was good for everyone. The originally tense atmosphere eased up quite a bit. Wei Zhe cursed in his heart. Cunning. She was just saying nice words. If she wasn't afraid of these people and was worried that she would be besieged, she wouldn't have made such a choice and said such words. But the situation had changed. Wei Zhe knew that it wasn't good to keep suppressing Chu Luiyue, so he could only wave his sleeves. Then we'll wait and see Master Yu's glory. Tang Ku asked. Are you sure? Chu Luiyue nodded. I've made up my mind. Please enlighten me, Senior Tang Ku. Tang Ku laughed heartily when she heard that. Good. Since you've said so, I'll treat you all equally. It's easy to get my inheritance. The Tianlei here is something that I've accumulated for tens of thousands of years. From now on, you can think of all ways to devour it. There's no time limit for this competition. Whoever devours the most will be the final winner. Of course, if any of you can't withstand the power of the Tianlei and explode, I won't be responsible. It's up to you to decide what to do. The final winner will be able to open the 10 bronze doors and obtain my inheritance. Wonderful Book Room. Chapter 2059. After Tang Ke finished speaking, everyone was a little dazed. This is the competition. Isn't it too simple and crude? But after thinking about it carefully, they had to admit that this was indeed an extremely effective method for weapon refiners to quickly determine the winner. This was because the difference in strength between weapon refiners was largely reflected in the ability to trigger Tianlei. The higher the level, the stronger the strength, and the more Tianlei that could be triggered. Now that there were so many Tianlei here, it was a lot more convenient. Senior Tang Ke, may I ask if only we can participate in this competition, or can we have outside help? Wei Zhe suddenly spoke. Tang Ke laughed. Naturally, only we can participate. Then, the scarlet gold heavenly phoenix that Sheng Guanyu has contracted is an ancient divine beast, and it has an extremely strong ability to devour Tianlei. If this is also counted as Sheng Guanyu, wouldn't it be a little unfair to others? Sheng Guanjing couldn't help but scold. Wei Zhe, do you still have any shame? Our family's girl has already agreed not to chase you out and compete with you. Do you still think it's not enough? If you really feel that it's unfair, why don't you go and contract an ancient divine beast yourself? What do you mean by always having ideas about our youth? You're the dignified head of the family Wei after all, how can you actually say such words? Are you that afraid of losing? These words caused Wei Zhe's face to turn red. He took a deep breath, trying his best to suppress his anger, and said in a deep voice. Senior Shengguan, I'm just speaking the truth. I believe that everyone present has this layer of concern, right? Contract an ancient divine beast. There's only one in the entire Divine Ruins world for so many years. How can they compete? If the Scarlet Gold Heavenly Phoenix is really counted, there's no need for them to compete in this round. Tang Ke paused, as if she was thinking, and then asked. Girl, what do you think? What do I think? What else can I think? Chu Luiyue cursed in her heart. This Tang Ke was really digging a hole for her to jump into. However, she could only accept it now. Since the head of the family Wei has said so, if I don't agree, wouldn't it seem like I don't know etiquette and take advantage of everyone? Chu Luiyue smiled faintly. Dumpling doesn't count, but I have a request. Go ahead. Although Dumpling is not participating in this competition, she has always liked to devour the power of Tianlei to refine her muscles and bones. So, Senior Tang Ke, please allow Dumpling to continue staying here. Of course. Tang Ke agreed without hesitation. Wei Zhe, do you have any other requests? Wei Zhe hurriedly replied, replying to Senior Tang Ke, no. He had achieved his goal, and that was enough. Everyone else nodded in agreement without saying a word. After all, Dumpling was Chu Luiyue's contracted divine beast. If she insisted on letting Dumpling participate, the others wouldn't have any reason to refute. Now that she agreed to not count Dumpling's results, it was already a big compromise. If they were to continue speaking, everyone would feel ashamed and embarrassed. Without the help of the Crimson Gold Celestial Phoenix, how could Chu Luiyue be their opponent alone? Although everyone knew that Chu Luiyue was Nansu Huai's disciple and was also an all-rounder in cultivation, the fame she made in the Divine Ruins world was related to martial artists and mystic cultivators. As for smithing, no one had heard of it before. However, as the Holy Sun, Rongxiu seemed to have occupied the first place on the Green Cloud roll when he was in Lingxiao College. If they had the time, they might as well guard against Rongxiu. As for Chu Luiyue, without external help, there was really no need to worry. Tang Ke said. Since that's the case, the competition will now wait. Before he finished his sentence, he was suddenly interrupted by Chu Luiyue. Senior, I have another question. Fortunately, Tang Ke was patient and did not get angry. She only asked, Girl, what do you want to say? Chu Luiyue cupped her fists and bowed respectfully. What I want to ask is, if the contracted beast is considered external help and can't be counted in the results, then, what about the divine artifacts? Divine artifacts can also trigger Tianlei. Tang Ke laughed heartily. As long as it's your own and can trigger Tianlei with your own strength, it's naturally yours. Chu Luiyue's lips curled up. Thank you, Senior. Low whispers came from the crowd. Right. I heard that Sheng Guanyu has a lot of divine artifacts, even a divine artifact like the Heavenly Square's Sacred Cauldron. With so many treasures, she has a higher chance of winning. So what? No matter how many divine weapons she had, wouldn't she still have to consume her own energy to trigger the heavenly lightning? I think she can't even fully utilize the power of a venerable divine artifact. Not to mention other things. That's true. The final test of this competition is one's talent and strength. Chu Luiyue looked calm, as if she didn't hear the discussion at all. Tang Ke's voice soon reverberated throughout the entire space. Since you have no more questions, then, let the competition begin. As soon as she finished speaking, the crowd dispersed and found a place to sit. They were not dumpling, so they couldn't rely on their own bodies to resist. The best way was to refine the divine artifact and use it to trigger the heavenly lightning. In a way, this competition was also a competition of everyone's ability to refine artifacts. After all, the higher the level of the divine artifact, the more Tianlei it could trigger. Fortunately, this place was spacious enough for everyone to spread out. Dumpling grabbed a Tianlei next to her and stuffed it into her mouth. Ah, you really don't need my help. As he spoke, lightning flashed in all directions, and fire blazed brightly. Some people were quietly sizing her up. When they saw this scene, their mouths couldn't help but twitch. Hiss. It hurts just looking at her. The crimson gold celestial phoenix. She really lives up to her name. Chu Luiyue looked at her and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Could it be that she was also like this in the spring of Thousand Wine Mountain? Don't worry, your master can win even if she relies on herself. Chu Luiyue gave her a reassuring look. You can go and play by yourself first. Dumpling trusted her very much. When she heard her words, she immediately relaxed and raised her small face to smile brightly. Then I'll go. With that, she tiptoed and rushed toward the place where the Tianlei gathered. For a moment, there was a crackling sound. The crowd fell silent. Fortunately, Wei Zhe said that just now. Otherwise, there would be no point in competing. Fortunately, Sheng Guanyu won't be able to hold on for long, someone in the crowd muttered softly. Clang! The sound of a heavy object falling to the ground was suddenly heard. Everyone who was about to go about their own business was shocked. They quickly looked over and saw a transparent cauldron suddenly appear in front of Chu Luiyue. That's the Heavenly Square Cauldron. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2060. It was rumored that one of the 10 great sacred artifacts, the Heavenly Square Cauldron, was in Chu Luiyue's hands. Because of this, many families and clans had forced their way to Fangzhou City and almost barged into Lingxiao College. This matter had caused quite a stir back then, so it was hard not to know about it. However, very few people had seen the Heavenly Square Cauldron with their own eyes. Now that Chu Luiyue took it out without hesitation, it attracted many people's attention. The heavenly square cauldron was transparent and colorless karmic fire was burning inside. A heavy pressure was slowly emitted from it. I haven't seen this item in a long time. Tang Ku suddenly let out a long sigh. You and it are quite faded. Chu Liyue smiled. This is my blessing. Tang Ku fell silent. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. For some reason, she felt that Tang Ku seemed to care more about the heavenly square cauldron than the sacred artifacts he had made. Rong Xiao was here. It was impossible that he didn't know that the Thousand Peaks halberd was in Rong Xiao's hands. However, Tang Ku didn't mention it from the beginning until now. Instead, when she took out the heavenly square cauldron, Tang Ku, she lowered her eyes and suppressed the thoughts in her heart. No matter what, she had to win this round first. She sat cross-legged and seemed to be ready to activate the Tianlei. Many gazes fell on her. After all, the heavenly square cauldron was a sacred artifact. They were also very curious. It's rumored that the heavenly square cauldron is used to make pills. However, this competition is about activating the Tianlei. If she wants to win, she has to activate the heavenly square cauldron with the strength and means of a blacksmith. This and refining medicine are two different things. Yes. In the end, she probably can't even summon half of the heavenly square cauldron's power. It's a pity that the heavenly square cauldron is in her hands. Clang. An ear-piercing clang suddenly sounded. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly looked in the direction of the voice. Rong Xiao had unknowingly summoned the 10,000 Peaks halberd and stabbed it into the ground. The end of the 10,000 Peaks halberd was still trembling because of the remaining power. With Wanfeng's halberd as the center, several cracks spread out on the incomparably hard ground. One had to know that so many Tianlei had rushed out from the ground, but not a single mark was left on the surface. Rong Xiao's attack contained an astonishing amount of power. As far as I know, no one here seems to have a saint artifact. Since he had already fallen behind, instead of thinking about how to catch up, he was just waiting for others to make a mistake so that he could sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. I wonder when such a good thing would happen in this world. Rong Xiao's sword-like eyebrows raised slightly. His handsome and enchanting face seemed to be smiling, but the corners of his eyes and the tip of his eyebrows were filled with undisguised ridicule. His words didn't contain a single vulgar word, but it made many people's faces turn red with shame. Different from Chu Liyue, who had just gained a foothold, Rong Xiao was already famous in the Divine Ruins world for a long time. All the major families and clans were always afraid of him when he was mentioned. If they met, they would be even more polite. No choice, this man was too ruthless. It was just that he hadn't fought much in recent years, especially this time when he came together with Chu Liyue. Along the way, he had always been kind, gentle and elegant, causing many people to almost forget what kind of person he was in the past. At this moment, his move was obviously a warning. Is about to start the competition. Everyone, please be quiet and don't disturb her. Rong Xiao's expression was languid as he said indifferently. Everyone felt sullen when they heard this. Listen to this. Is this something a human would say? What does he mean by asking everyone to be quiet when she's about to start the competition? Who here wasn't about to compete? Could it be that they weren't participating in the same competition? This is too much. However, although everyone was dissatisfied in their hearts, no one dared to say anything in front of him. Looking at Rong Xiao's posture, his thoughts weren't on the competition anyway. If anyone were to disturb Chu Liyue, he would really do anything. They couldn't afford to offend him. Wei Zhe let out a long breath and tidied his clothes. Let them be arrogant for a while more. When the competition ended and they were utterly defeated, it wouldn't be too late to ridicule them and turn the situation around. After Rong Xiao spoke and openly threatened, all kinds of discussions finally stopped. For some reason, Tang Ku didn't say anything during this process. Perhaps it was because of the Thousand Peaks halberd, many people thought in their hearts, but they quickly restrained their thoughts and began to focus on refining the divine weapons, preparing to trigger Tianlei. Shengguan Jing glanced at Rongxiu and asked curiously. Rongxiu, you don't intend to participate in this competition. Compared to you, his innate talent and strength were only stronger and not weaker. If you're worried that you won't win, don't misunderstand. Rongxiu knew that he had misunderstood, so he laughed and explained. I'm indeed not very interested in this. You can open the door and enter here first, which proves that she's the most suitable successor of Senior Tangku. No matter what others thought or how they fought, it was useless. Shengguan Jing thought about it carefully and felt that it made sense, so he didn't say anything else. Boom! A loud sound was heard. Shengguan Jing and the others hurriedly looked back and saw that Tianlei had already struck towards the heavenly square cauldron. Someone in the crowd couldn't sit still. So fast. The competition had just begun, and Chu Luiyue seemed to have just sat down. Why did the Tianlei come down? Wonderful book house. Chapter 2061. The Tianlei quickly flew down and fell into the heavenly square cauldron, disappearing in the blink of an eye. From the beginning to the end, it did not cause any ripples at all. Everyone was stunned, but they quickly came to their senses. A divine artifact was a divine artifact after all. It was naturally easy for it to deal with a few Tianlei. After some time, when the number of Tianlei increased, Chu Luiyue would not be able to withstand it and would give up. Just as he was thinking, another bolt of heavenly lightning struck down. Just like the first one, it quickly and quietly drilled into the heavenly square cauldron. The transparent karmic fire burned fiercely and swallowed it in an instant. Everyone had different reactions. Some were envious, some were jealous, and some had already looked away and started to focus on themselves. After all, no matter how they looked at it, it would not improve their results at all. If they had the time and energy, they might as well try their best to trigger more Tianlei. Perhaps they could even take a gamble. When one person started, the others followed suit. Soon, bolts of heavenly thunder began to fly in different directions. Shengguan Jing also stood beside Chu Luiyue and took out a sword embryo. This docking jade spiritual embryo is extremely precious. Fortunately, I did not have time to carefully polish it before. Otherwise, I would have wasted today's great opportunity. From all aspects, the heavenly lightning here was far beyond what he could summon. If he could use the Tianlei here to refine it, it would definitely be more convenient. The quality of the divine artifact that was forged would also be more outstanding. No matter whether he could obtain Tang Ku's inheritance or not, it was extremely rare and precious to be able to cultivate in this sea of lightning. Shengguan Jing slightly staggered his feet, and the docking jade spiritual embryo quietly floated in front of him. He closed his eyes gently and began to activate the power in his body. Soon, bolts of heavenly lightning struck one after another. The most shocking thing was that the Tianlei all fell on the same spot on the docking jade spiritual embryo. Some people who saw this scene from afar could not help but exclaim inwardly. I've long heard that Shengguan Jing is a top-notch weapon refining venerable. Now that I've seen it with my own eyes, he is indeed amazing. This level of control and sensitivity is indeed not something an ordinary person can compare to. After all, he was someone who had fought against 7 weapon refining venerables back then and remained undefeated. Although he had been in a deep slumber for 1,000 years, his strength had not diminished at all. He is indeed an extremely strong opponent. Rongxiu, on the other hand, stood in the same spot, leaning on the Thousand Peaks halberd. His arms were crossed, and he looked lazy. From the looks of it, he really did not intend to participate in this battle. Yan Qing and Chang Wanzhou stood to the side in silence, waiting and guarding. In the vast space, only the three of them did not move. All kinds of noises gradually disappeared, leaving only the sound of Tianlei echoing in his ears. Chu Luiyue didn't seem to care about the outside world. He only stared at the heavenly square cauldron in front of him. As more and more Tianlei fell into the heavenly square cauldron, its pressure gradually increased, and its entire body became clearer and brighter. Chu Luiyue's force and mind were also constantly being depleted. However, his expression remained calm and focused. Time flew by quickly. In the blink of an eye, a day had passed. Looking around, other than Rongxiu, Yanqing, and Dumpling, who was still running around, the rest of the people were focused on the competition. However, after so long, the number of Tianlei in this space did not seem to have decreased. This showed how terrifying the number of Tianlei was. However, Dumpling was very happy. Ever since that time in the Eye of the Thousand Wine Spring, she had not been so happy in a long time. It was so blissful to be here. There were so many Tianlei here, and the power they contained was so strong that it might be difficult for an ordinary person to bear. However, for Dumpling, who had just opened her fifth meridian, it was the most comfortable. She ran up and down, left and right, barefoot. Her body flickered with silver light, which had not disappeared since the beginning. Rongxiu tilted his head, glanced at her, and finally raised his hand. A snow-white figure instantly appeared in front of him. It was Shui. This is a rare opportunity. Go and play for a while. It was rare for Rongxiu to be so merciful. Shui was so moved that tears welled up in its eyes. It roared excitedly and ran out. Some people heard the commotion and looked over. When they saw that Rongxiu had released his contracted magical beast, many of them were shocked. Although the white lion was also a divine beast, it was much weaker than an ancient divine beast. Otherwise, the people present would have released their contracted divine beasts long ago. Even if it did not count towards the final result, it was still good to increase the strength of the contracted divine beast. However, no one did so because they knew very well that ordinary divine beasts could not bear the power of Tianlei. Now that Rongxiu had done so, roar! Shui was extremely happy as it shuttled through the sea of lightning. Its body flashed with lightning and sparks. However, the crowd quickly realized that this did not have any effect on Shui. Instead, it seemed that its aura was increasing continuously like dumplings. It was also devouring the power of Tianlei. After realizing this, many people felt stifled in their chests. It was fine that Rongxiu was domineering and powerful, but even his contracted divine beast was more capable than other divine beasts. This was really unreasonable. Shui was very proud when it sensed those gazes. It raised its neck and did a 360-degree turn in the air. It was simply too happy. Then, it swooped down and came to Rongxiu. It was rare for it to be so close and docile. Now, it finally understood its master's good intentions. What was this small scene to it? Compared to what it had suffered in the Red Moon Desert, it was not worth mentioning at all. Its master was really far-sighted. If it had not gone to the Red Moon Desert a few times before, it would not be able to play around here now. Rongxiu's lips curled up slightly. Shui seemed to be encouraged. It spun around on the spot and ran away happily. This scene made the crowd want to vomit blood, but there was nothing they could do. They could only stare. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. At a certain moment, a muffled sound was finally heard in the quiet space. Bam! It sounded like something had fallen to the ground. Rongxiu looked to the side. A middle-aged man fell straight to the ground. Blood kept flowing out of the corner of his mouth. His eyes were tightly shut, and his face was pale. He seemed to have fainted. However, he was still holding a short sword tightly in his hands. Streaks of silver light flickered on it. In the next moment, the silver light quickly spread to his entire body. No, a panicked voice came from the side. It seemed that it had a premonition of what was about to happen. Rong Xiu calmly retracted his gaze. Bam! The man's body suddenly exploded. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2062. However, there seemed to be an invisible barrier around him, completely surrounding him. His body exploded, but before it could splatter, it had already quickly disappeared. In the blink of an eye, his body had completely disappeared. There was not a single trace of blood on the ground. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, no one would have believed that someone had died in such a short period of time. He did not even have time to cry out in pain or call for help before he had completely disappeared from this world. There were several people in the circle closest to him. At this time, they all stopped what they were doing and looked at this scene in a daze. One of them had a scar on his face. His face was as pale as a ghost, and his whole body was trembling. The person who died was his cousin. They had a very good relationship with each other. This time, they had specially come together. They did not expect that he would die just like that. Tang Ke's voice faintly sounded, "I have already warned you before. Do what you can. If you disregard your own life because of greed and desire to win, then even if you die, you can't blame others. You only have one life. All of you, take care of yourselves." In the silent space, this voice sounded particularly cold and indifferent. A layer of coldness swept over and shrouded everyone. That's right. Tang Ke had already said what needed to be said before. That person's death was obviously because he could no longer bear the power of the Tianlei, but he still insisted on continuing to bear it. Who could he blame for not being able to bear it himself? If they wanted to win this fierce competition, if they wanted to become the top refiner, if they wanted to stand in the highest position in the world, who didn't want to? But how could it be so easy? Some people showed hesitation on their faces. In fact, it was already very difficult for them to persevere until now. Many people were already on the verge of collapse. They only needed one last push to end up like that man. Tang Ke said, "If anyone wants to give up, just say so. I will let them go." The atmosphere was even more eerily quiet. After a moment, a man suddenly spoke. "I give up." The person who spoke was Scarface, whose cousin had died earlier. It was a simple 3 words, but he said it with great difficulty. Even his voice was trembling. His eyes were full of struggle and unwillingness. It could be seen that it was extremely difficult for him to make this decision. However, he was very clear about his own understanding. His strength was slightly inferior to his cousin's. If even his cousin couldn't hold on, then how much better could he be? If even he died, the bloodline of the family would be cut off. Therefore, no matter what, he had to protect his life. Even if he was extremely unwilling to give up, he had no choice but to do so. Tang Ke was not surprised. Survival of the fittest, survival of the fittest, this is the most basic law of the Divine Ruins world. However, knowing how to judge the situation, advancing when it's time to advance and retreating when it's time to retreat is also a smart move. In his words, there seemed to be a hint of approval and consolation. Those who came here were almost all the most outstanding artifact refiners in the Divine Ruins. If even one of them died, it would be a huge loss. Tang Ke only wanted to select the most suitable person to inherit her legacy. She did not intend to kill all of these people. Withdrawing from the competition was an extremely difficult decision. This was especially true for the most prideful weapon refiners. When Scarface heard Tang Ke's words, he took a deep breath and calmed down a lot. "Senior Tang Ke, this junior has a presumptuous request. I wonder if you can agree." Speak. Junior. Although I have given up on the competition, I still want to stay here and watch the battle. I wonder if you can agree. Scarface said with some apprehension. However, Tang Ke didn't seem to care about this and laughed heartily. What's wrong with that? You can just retreat to the entrance. Scarface was immediately excited. He thanked her profusely and stood up to walk over. Although he had withdrawn from the competition, it would be great if he could stay here and continue watching the battle. On one hand, he could broaden his horizons and increase his experience and strength. On the other hand, he could also satisfy his curiosity. Who didn't want to know who would inherit Tang Ke's legacy in the end? Scarface quickly retreated to the entrance and exhaled softly. It could be seen that although he felt a little regretful that he had to withdraw from the competition, being able to protect his life still relieved the pressure in his heart by a lot. With the first person taking the lead, the others quickly followed suit. Not long after, a few more people chose to give up and withdraw from the competition. There were also some people who secretly looked at Chu Luiyue. Among this group of artificers, her strength was the most inconspicuous. Now that 4 or 5 people had already given up, it was reasonable to say that she shouldn't be able to hold on any longer. However, everyone waited and waited, but Chu Luiyue didn't move. She sat cross-legged in her seat and didn't move at all. She calmly looked at the heavenly square cauldron in front of her. The Tianlei was still falling. It was faintly discernible, and the speed was even faster. Many people muttered in their hearts. However, with Rongxiu's warning, they restrained themselves and didn't dare to say anything publicly. Thus, everyone could only continue to wait silently. Everyone was very curious. How long could Chu Luiyue last? In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. In the middle, 2 people exploded and died because they couldn't control it well. Apart from that, more than 10 people chose to withdraw. One had to know that there were indeed many people who came for Tang Ke's tomb in the beginning. However, after a batch of people died in the stone forest, there weren't many people who came in. Now, a few more people died and more than 10 people withdrew. There were only a few dozen people left in the competition. However, Chu Luiyue still didn't move. She sat there quietly, just like on the first day. The Tianlei continued to fall into the heavenly square cauldron. It seemed like she didn't have to worry about anything. If it weren't for the fact that everyone could sense that the origin power around her was indeed being consumed rapidly, they would have thought that she was using some sort of method to cheat. However, it was also because of this that people couldn't understand. Those who were in the competition didn't have time to pay attention to her, but those who were standing at the edge of the entrance were focused on Chu Luiyue. A group of people was discussing something in low voices. I remember that rumor has it that Sheng Wanyu is extremely outstanding in cultivation as a martial artist. She can fight against her eminence in the Ascended God realm. However, no one has ever mentioned that she has any achievements in the field of weapon refinement. Why does it seem like she's not bad? She's more than not bad. To be able to persist until now, her ability is better than those of us who withdrew from the competition. In my opinion, we've all underestimated her. I heard that she has always been on par with Rongxiu on Lingxiao College's master roll. On the master roll, Rongxiu is number 1, and she is number 2. Moreover, she is Shengguan Jing's junior. Perhaps, she can really amaze the world this time. Remember the mobile version of the website. Chapter 2063. Amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. I don't think that's necessary. Even if she has extremely high talent, how old is she now? At most, she's a high-level craftsman. When some people praised her, there were naturally people who criticized her. After all, there were many people who didn't like Chu Luiyue. I also heard that Rongxiu can already refine a king divine weapon. He has already broken through to become a king craftsman. However, even so, it was still far from enough to take the lead in this competition. After all, there are so many craftsmen venerables present. Shangguanyu wants to win. I think it's difficult. That's true. Perhaps she's just forcing herself to hold on now. If we wait any longer, she probably won't be able to take it and will choose to give up. This wait lasted for another 3 days. At this time, more than half of the people had been eliminated. Only a dozen people were still persisting. Among these people, 9 of them were craftsmen venerables, and 6 were craftsmen kings. Only Chu Liuyue's level was unknown. Yes, even Chu Liyue didn't know her own strength. That was because she didn't put much effort into crafting. After all this time, she was either the one who was causing trouble for others or she was the one who was causing trouble for others. All her time and effort were used to deal with these things. Hence, she didn't have much experience in crafting. The last time she seriously crafted a divine weapon was when she helped Chang Wanzhou forge the Cloud Sky Copper Sword. After such a long time, she didn't know how strong she was in this aspect. According to her own speculation, she was probably at the level of a high-level craftsman. Of course, this level couldn't be compared to the craftsman kings and craftsman venerables present. However, the key was that the heavenly square cauldron was a divine weapon. Chu Liyue indeed couldn't directly refine a king divine weapon or a venerable divine weapon like them. She could only try her best to use the heavenly square cauldron to activate the Tianlei. However, this wasn't a foolproof method. Chu Liyue looked up slightly and glanced at the heavenly square cauldron in front of her. Streams of light flickered, clear and lustrous, sacred and powerful. Even the karmic fire inside was burning more vigorously than before. The heavenly square cauldron was about to reach its limit. Even if the origin power in her body was inexhaustible and her spirit could barely support it, the heavenly square cauldron couldn't hold any more. The heavenly lightning above seemed to have sensed something, and the speed at which it struck gradually slowed down. Some of the silver light that had gathered above Chu Liyue's head began to disperse. The surrounding people quickly noticed this. A commotion broke out in the crowd. It seems like Shangguanyu won't be able to hold on for much longer. It's about time. How long has it been? However, to be able to stimulate all the potential of the heavenly square cauldron, he does have some ability. I wonder if she regrets her initial decision. Do you need my help? Dumpling flew to Chu Liyue's side and asked crisply. Chu Liyue gently shook his head. I can't, and I don't need to. But, Dumpling pouted angrily. However, those people said that Yu was going to lose. Chu Liyue looked up and smiled at her. Don't worry, Dumpling. She suddenly stood up. This was the first time she stood up since the start of the competition. As soon as he moved, he attracted the attention of many people. Even Sheng Wanjing and the others who were focused on refining the divine artifact turned their heads to look at her. Tang Ke's voice rang out. Girl, are you going to admit defeat? Everyone held their breaths. Tang Ke didn't ask any questions when so many people had withdrawn from the competition. At this point, Chu Liyue had just stood up when he spoke. However, everyone knew that Tang Ke had been paying attention to Chu Liyue since the beginning, so they weren't surprised and waited patiently. Then, they saw the girl raise her eyebrows and smile. Why would I? She said slowly. I just wanted to get up and move my body after sitting for a long time. As she said that, she really did turn her waist and move her muscles and bones. Her posture was relaxed and her expression was relaxed. She didn't look like she was under any pressure from the competition. Humph. Pretentious. Wei Zhe sneered disdainfully. He didn't believe that she could do anything. Chu Liyue tilted her head and glanced at Wei Zhe with a faint smile. It seems that the head of the family Wei is really concerned about me. Looking into those clear but dark and indifferent eyes, Wei Zai's heart skipped a beat and he subconsciously looked away. Then he realized that he didn't look imposing at all. So he turned his head again and wanted to say something to get back at her. "You've swoosh." Just as he started to speak, he was interrupted by a sharp and cold sound of something breaking through the air. Something had suddenly appeared in Chu Liuyue's hand and was rapidly unfurling. It was a red scroll that looked like a painting. However, it faintly emitted a suppressive aura that no one dared to underestimate. Wei Zai was still in a daze when someone in the crowd cried out in surprise. "Flowing clouds flying illustration." Wei Zai widened his eyes and didn't pay attention for a moment before he started coughing violently. "Cough, cough, cough," Chu Liyue asked with concern. What's wrong with the head of the family, Wei? Did you choke on something?" Wei Zai's face was red from coughing. When he finally stopped coughing, he was about to defend himself when he saw Chu Liyue smiling at him with the flowing clouds flying illustration in her hand. The words stuck in his throat couldn't come out. Flowing clouds flying illustration. It was also one of the 10 great divine artifacts. Why was this thing in Chu Liyue's hands? That's right. This thing was the Nan family's treasure. Previously, the Nan family had suffered a great loss at the hands of Chu Liyue. Even the head of the Nan family, Nan Yifan, had fallen at the Peach Blossom Cove. Therefore, it wasn't strange that the flowing clouds flying illustration had fallen into Chu Liyue's hands. During the battle at the Peach Blossom Cove, Chu Liyue had purposely released the news to intimidate everyone. However, the people outside weren't very clear about the specific situation. Chu Liyue had specially instructed them not to spread the news about the flowing clouds flying illustration. Therefore, not many people knew about it. Now that she had suddenly taken it out, it naturally caused everyone to be shocked. Countless gazes fell on Chu Liyue with different emotions. In the Divine Ruins world, even the first-rate families and clans might not have a divine artifact. However, Chu Liyue alone had 2 of them. How could this not cause people's emotions to surge? Chu Liyue turned a blind eye to those gazes. She unfolded the flowing clouds flying illustration, then closed her eyes and circulated the force in her body. Boom! 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 The numerous Tianlei above seemed to have been summoned as they descended one after another, heading straight for the flowing clouds flying illustration. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2064. Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. Chu Liyue narrowed her eyes in satisfaction. The heavenly square cauldron was full, but she had more than one divine artifact. Seeing the smile on Chu Liyue's face, Wei Zai instantly understood something. You've already prepared all of this, haven't you? Chu Liyue nodded without hesitation and smiled. Family Wei leader is really amazing. You can even see through this. Wei Zai was so angry that his face turned pale and his body trembled. At this very moment, anyone with eyes would be able to see it. Who was she mocking? Just as he was about to say something, Chu Liyue spoke again. I know that my talent and strength can't be compared to yours. If I want to win this competition, it will be extremely difficult. Fortunately, I've always been lucky and have a few divine artifacts. Perhaps I can use them to fight. Wei Zai's anger was stuck in his chest and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Good luck. A few divine artifacts? Fight with them. What kind of language is this? The treasures that countless families and clans in the world of Divine Ruins coveted were like cabbages to her. Is there any justice in this world? How was he going to let others live? Ah, right, Family Wei leader also had a divine artifact before, right? As soon as Chu Luiyue finished speaking, a low buzzing sound was heard. Buzz, Rongxiu stood beside the Thousand Peaks halberd and retracted his hand. It's here. Chu Luiyue shook her head regretfully. It's a pity that it has changed owners. Otherwise, wouldn't it be much easier for Family Way leader to win this round? You're wrong. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows and corrected a small mistake. This Thousand Peaks halberd didn't recognize Family Way leader as its owner before, so it can't be considered a change of owners. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. Look at me, I actually forgot about this. Family Way master, I didn't mean to offend you, please forgive me. Wei Zhe had completely lost his temper. He finally understood that these two people were in cahoots with each other. Bickering with them won't give you any advantage at all. He waved his sleeves fiercely and snorted coldly. I hope you can laugh until the end. Controlling the heavenly square cauldron had already consumed a lot of energy. Now, Chu Luiyue had summoned the flowing clouds diagram. She really wasn't afraid of death. He wanted to see how long she could hold on. Wei Zhe reluctantly retracted his thoughts and no longer paid any more attention to him. Chu Luiyue was too lazy to continue talking to him. He spread out the flowing cloud flying diagram in front of him and sat cross-legged again. There seemed to be a layer of faint luster on top of the thick ink and heavy color pattern. Streaks of Tianlei, containing an astonishing aura and power, continuously fell into it and quickly disappeared. Chu Luiyue held her breath and focused. For a moment, sparks flew in all directions in front of her. The brilliant and dazzling light reflected the calmness and indifference between her brows. This round, she must win. Chu Luiyue's sudden move stunned everyone present. After a long time, everyone finally realized what had happened. After a difficult mental struggle, they finally accepted all of this. No wonder Chu Luiyue was so confident. It turned out that she had already planned this from the beginning. If one divine artifact wasn't enough, there was another one. Who could withstand this? Even if it were the weapon refining venerables present, how many of them could go head-to-head with this? The key was that no one could say anything about her actions. After all, those two divine artifacts really did belong to her. Previously, they had tried their best to cancel Dumpling's qualification. They had thought that Chu Luiyue would be helpless from then on. Who would have thought that, and from the beginning, she had already asked clearly that the Tianlei triggered by the divine artifact would be counted in her final result. Tang Ke had said it herself. Who had the guts to refute and question it? Chu Luiyue was so young, but she was so scheming. Everyone had different thoughts, but Chu Luiyue didn't take these to heart at all. She had already given them enough face. If it weren't for the trouble and wanting to teach these people a lesson, she wouldn't have spent so much effort to deal with this competition. Only by defeating them fair and square would she be able to obtain Tang Ke's inheritance without any worries. Another few days passed. One after another, people chose to give up. In the end, there were only 3 people left in the competition. Chu Luiyue, Shengguan Jing, and Wei Zhe. Shengguan Jing was recognized as a powerhouse. Everyone expected him to stay until the end. As for the remaining 2 people, they were quite controversial. Chu Luiyue had 2 holy artifacts on her side. Even though the crowd had different opinions about this, they had to admit that she did have some capabilities. In comparison, Wei Zhe was more surprising. Although he was the head of the family Wei, had a noble status, and was quite powerful, compared to the people present, he wasn't the best. After all, this time, there were refining big shots who hadn't come out of seclusion for many years. Normally, when he met these people, he would have to be courteous. But now, those people couldn't take it anymore and chose to withdraw, but Wei Zhe unexpectedly persisted until now. This was a little surprising. Rongxiu glanced at Wei Zhe and smiled. The head of the family Wei is hiding his strength. Wei Zhe didn't seem to hear him. He was focused on devouring the power of Tianlei around him. There was a purple-black hammer in front of him. The hammer was engraved with ancient patterns, and its aura was restrained and heavy. The power of Tianlei fell on the hammer. He had taken it out at the beginning of the competition. Until now, it had devoured a lot of power of Tianlei, but it didn't change much. It didn't reach a state of saturation like the heavenly square cauldron either. This was interesting. Everyone could tell that the purple-black hammer was a venerable divine artifact. It was very powerful outside, but it wasn't enough here. But now, the amount of power of Tianlei it contained had surpassed the heavenly square cauldron, which was a divine artifact. At first, the people didn't feel that something was wrong, but as time passed, they finally realized that the hammer was indeed unusual. Rong Xiu glanced at it indifferently, and there seemed to be waves surging in his eyes. At this point, Tuanzi came to Rong Xiu's side, tilted its head, and sized up the purplish-black hammer as it muttered softly. She muttered, "Something is wrong with that thing." Rong Xiu looked down at her. "Oh. What's wrong?" Dumpling hesitated and said uncertainly, "I don't know. This. I can't say for sure, but it's just not right. It's like, Rong Xiu smiled. Dumpling couldn't help but ask, "Your Highness, why are you smiling? Aren't you worried that you will lose?" Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. He looked lazy, but he was extremely confident. She will never lose. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.